Corey Trimble from the Experienced Church to come forward and offer our prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Joe Gurley, who will lead us in our pledge to the American flag and to the Tennessee flag. Pastor Trimble.
First, I just wanted to say thank you. And I know I haven't been called to give any kind of speech or anything, but I was up in New England last week working with some churches up there, and have gotten to know some of the city officials in Salem, Massachusetts, and Albany, New York, and Burlington, Vermont. And I think sometimes we easily forget how wonderful of a city we live in. And so I just wanted to say thank you for everyone in the room. Thank you for the honor to even get to pray for all of you, and for those of you who are just citizens, but citizens in this great community. And those of you who are leaders in here, I just want to tell you thank you. And I want to pray for all of you in this room, and pray that you guys have a productive meeting, and that God keeps his hand on you guys tonight, okay? Lord Jesus, God, we just want to tell you thank you, Lord. Thank you, God, for our wonderful county mayor and his vision for this county. Thank you, God, for all of the different officials in this room, Lord. We pray, God, that you give them a gift of wisdom, that you give them a gift of knowledge and discernment tonight, Lord. For the people in this room who may be bringing different things to the attention of our city leaders, God, I pray, Lord, that their petitions are heard, and that, God, that level heads prevail, and that we can just be loving and adult-like in all the conversations that take place in this room tonight. Lord, we pray for the future of our city. We pray, God, for not just the leaders in this room, but future leaders and the future growth and all the wonderful things you're doing around us, God. Lord, bless this meeting tonight. Make it productive. Bless every man and woman in this room, God, and protect them and keep them safe. We pray all these things, God, in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.
Commissioner Gurley.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Three white stars on a field of blue, God keep them strong and ever true. It is with pride and love that we salute the flag of Tennessee.
Roll call, members. Roll call. Record the roll, Madam Secretary. We're not up?
Yeah.
We have a quorum, 20 present.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We do have a quorum to conduct our business tonight. I'd like to welcome all of our guests tonight, all the speakers. Thank you for attending our meeting. At this point in time, I'd like to call on Chairman Pro Tem Jeff Phillips for approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Ketron. I've reviewed those minutes. I find them to be in order and move that we dispense with the reading and that they be adopted.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions? Without objection, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to call on Commissioner Joe Gurley to read our resolution of sympathy for Mr. Dan Whittle, longtime friend of Rutherford County.
Ms. Whittle, if you will join me up here. Whereas it was with great sadness that the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners learned of the death of Mr. Dan Whittle, a friend of many. Whereas Mr. Whittle is survived by his wife Patricia, numerous stepchildren and step-grandchildren, and Honey Bear, his lovable house dog. And whereas the noted journalist from Canaloo, Missouri, was also a war correspondent, radio talk show host, crusader, co-founder and member of the Tennessee Journalism Hall of Fame, class of 2018, author, speaker, nature photographer, and community activist. And whereas he worked as a reporter for the Daily Standard in Sikeston, Missouri, the Nashville Banner, the Daily News Journal in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and was a regular contributor as a columnist to the Murfreesboro Post and the Cannon Courier. And whereas Dan is the author of 3 books, Canaloo, People, Culture, Boot Hill Town, Music City, Talent Behind the Stars, and a biography soon to be published about his childhood friend, Missouri native Gary Lewis, a retired Navy captain, jet pilot, and successful entrepreneur. And whereas he was an active member of our community and had friends from all walks of life who were proud to call him friend. And whereas we know that his passing has caused great sadness to his family and friends. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners, at its regular session on the 16th day of May, 2019, does hereby extend sincere sympathy to the family of Mr. Dan Whittle, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution of sympathy be forwarded to the family of Mr. Whittle by the clerk of this legislative body. I so move.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions? Pat, just want to say there's one thing in there that Commissioner didn't talk about, and that's Whittlemania. And for everybody who ever went to Toots and participated in Whittlemania, it'll always be remembered, and we'll always remember Dan. He was such a great and giving person back to our community. Without objection, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Our condolences, Pat. Now it's time for our public comments, and we have 6 people signed up to speak. I will ask that you come forward, give your name, address, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. First, I have Ms. Leah Hewlin. Topic is on pretrial diversion. Ms. Hewlin, you're recognized at the well. Right up here, yes, ma'am. You don't get nervous. No.
I had to borrow someone's glasses. We were under the impression that you all were voting tonight on the issue of pre-trial. I did not see it on the agenda. Are you voting on that tonight?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Well, please forgive us for erroneously thinking that you were voting for that, but thank you for hearing us, and thank each and every one of you for the service that you give and you provide to our community. My name is Leah Hewlin. I'm a veteran, single mother, businesswoman, bail bond company owner, and very concerned taxpayer about the unsecured pretrial release program. I'm asking you to take your time before you vote and really consider the facts. It seems that there have been many misrepresentations in the media, whether it's in the newspaper or on Facebook, or in someone said this or that or the other, and there are many misrepresentations, and there has not been much credible data presented to you so that you can make the best, most informed decision for our community. The decision that you make about unsecured pretrial release will impact the citizens of Rutherford County today and long after. I want to share a few words that I feel are factual about the pretrial release program that has been presented through the media. I believe that unsecured pretrial release is unlawful, unlikely to succeed, un-American, unsafe, and very expensive. The foundation of the unsecured pretrial release issue is that there are a significant number of people languishing away in the jail because they are poor and cannot afford bond. Although I'm sympathetic to that plight, this is simply not true. There's not one single person in jail because they're poor. Every single person in jail is in jail because they have allegedly been accused of a crime, or they have been accused of a crime. They have already gone through the process where either a law enforcement officer or a grand jury or a magistrate has looked at the information and decided that there was enough information for them to be accused of a crime. The program has proposed to save a certain amount of dollars, and I say a certain amount of dollars because we've heard 1.4 million, we've heard 2 million, we've heard 3 million, but the program has proposed to save millions of dollars by merely releasing nonviolent, first offense, indigent offenders with strong ties to the community on an unsecured release. Unsecured means there's no accountability, there's no program, there's nobody that's put collateral up to make sure that that defendant comes back to court.
Ms. Hewlin, your 3 minutes is up.
Wow, it goes by so fast. Well, I beseech you for a later term that we would love very much to share some information on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hewlin. Ms. Hewlin. Yeah. Hey. Next, we have Sean Ames. Three minutes, Mr. Ames. You're recognized.
Good evening. I'm here to offer a different perspective tonight, not as a bond owner, but as one of the thousands of employees that are employed by bond owners. I work for Grumpy's and Miss Leah Hewlin. I'm a husband, father, Tennessee University graduate, homeowner, voter, and tonight a concerned citizen. I think we can all agree that many facets of the criminal justice system can use some reform, but I'm here to tell you why throwing the secured bail system into criminal justice reform is a terrible idea and what happens when it's replaced with pretrial. This is because pretrial is failing miserably across the country. It's emboldening criminals, killing law enforcement morale, and very importantly, new recruitment for law enforcement, increasing crime and putting public safety at risk. Here are some facts. In Ohio, since pretrial was implemented a short time ago in just 6 cities, they have over 300,000 open warrants cases. 300,000. If that figure was in Tennessee, make no mistake, Murfreesboro would be on that list. Just recently, New Jersey pretrialed a high school teacher with 11 outstanding warrants who was found in his car with one of his female students, drugs, sex toys, and a firearm. Where pretrial has been implemented, the average failure to appear rate has skyrocketed up to 40%. In Atlanta, just a few hours south of here, there's been a 71% increase in some instances in failures to appear. They aren't turning themselves in. They're being arrested on new and many times more dangerous crimes, and they're pretrialed again and again and again. Of course, after years of abusing pretrial, they can just move to places like Nashville where pretrial exists, or maybe Rutherford County if it passes here, where they can abuse the system and citizens. States that have implemented pretrial are regretting their decision because of the damage it is doing to their communities, but it's too late. Once the government kills a private sector job and replaces it with the government entity, even as that entity begins to fail and unravel before their eyes, it's almost impossible to undo, and we all know this. Recently, the collateral damage from pretrial in Tennessee was witnessed nationwide when emboldened gangs of four-wheelers terrorized the streets, tourists, and citizens in Nashville while almost killing a police officer. And Tennessee made national news again when interstate commerce was literally shut down on I-40. What I'd like to do, if you'll give me 10 seconds, is play you their exact words when they're discussing shutting it down.
We're all gonna follow side by side. We're gonna go from Laverne, come to exit 62. Before 62, we're gonna shut it down because we're gonna be in Davidson. So not Rutherford, you know. If Rutherford cops come, we're all running into Davidson. They cannot come at us regardless. Metro's gonna say.
What they're saying is to stay in Davidson County because they'll be released. There won't be any consequences. If they cross the Rutherford County line, they'll go to jail for shutting down an entire interstate. These aren't my words, they're their words. That's pretrial. It's waiting at the Rutherford County line, and whether or not it crosses that line is up to y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ames. We certainly appreciate that. Thank you, sir. What our clerk's doing is when you come and make a speech, we're keeping that as part of the official minutes of the meeting to back up, so when they're produced. So just let you know we're not just wanting to see how good you spell. Okay, so, thank you. So Mr. Ronnie Buff, you're next. Mr. Buff, you're recognized and well. You have 3 minutes, sir.
My name is Ronnie Buff. My wife and I live at 2103 Stony Meadow Drive here in Murfreesboro. I'd like to start out with saying just less than 2 weeks ago, a news article in the Daily News Journal quoted Judge Eichard as saying that pretrial will benefit Rutherford County. We don't know why. We were given no facts, no data, just that it would help Rutherford County. We've had ROR, or released without any money, only by signing your name, for almost 2 years, and the jail is still full. On the following day after Judge Eichard was in the newspaper, our own Sheriff Fitzhugh was in the newspaper asking for a $2.8 million increase, with $1.8 million going to the jail itself for 10 detention officers, and to convert 3 maintenance positions into detention officers. So evidently someone doesn't believe that the jail is going to be lowered, the capacity, or why would you need more officers? Taxpayers are being forced to pay for the court, the public defender, counselors, prosecutors, clerks, buildings, all officers, the equipment, police cars, and now the criminals get arrested and released with no bond. We serve FTA campuses ourselves, bonding companies. Does not cost the county a nickel. Doesn't cost the taxpayer anything when we go out. Sheriff's going to have to add more people on to go out and serve the ones that are on the record now. We don't know how many are on, but we know there are quite a few. We know now that a vote will not be taken tonight, but if it's taken, if it had been taken, it would have been without data, facts, and more importantly, without the citizens having a voice on this new tax. And that's what it is, a tax that will only increase in time. A new tax without our taxpayers having a voice will lay heavy on their minds as they cast their votes in the future. Another thing, pretrial is supposed to let people out earlier. Let's say they get arrested on a Friday night. There's no counselor. There's no one to turn them loose because it has to go through the pretrial program. So they would stay in jail from Friday until Monday with no bond. Now, if you're wanting to empty the jail, that's certainly not one way to do that. All we're asking for is some time to present the data and to get the facts before the commission, the true facts, and how they have harmed every jurisdiction that they're in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Buff. Next we have Mr. Paul Williams. You're recognized in the will, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, County Commissioners, for hearing us tonight. Obviously, y'all know the theme of the night. I've presented y'all with each a packet with what is currently going on in Rutherford County. I understand y'all have been given some information, but I don't believe you've been given all the information. So the packet that I gave you, if anybody could bother to look at the first set of the packet here, you'll see all of the C's are highlighted in pink. That is capious. That means the person did not appear in court. Every one of those, actually 14 of those, is highlighted in orange next to it as ROR. Rutherford County 2 years ago started testing the pretrial release program. That is, those RORs are their version of the pretrial release before it was voted on to test it. On this docket, there are 85 people total total. 16 of those people were incarcerated, which left a total of 69 people free to come of their own free will to court. 14 of those people failed to appear, and those 14 people were ROR'd. 2 other people failed to appear that were under a bonding company, and unfortunately, Mr. McAdoo, they were yours. Sorry. Yeah, you know ahead of time. This was from Monday's docket. This is 21% of the docket. 21% of the docket didn't show up when they were given the right to unsecured bail. That puts the burden on the sheriff's department to go pick these people up. That puts that they're already overworked. I believe it's close to 30,000 unserved warrants at Rutherford County right now. We understand that all of those won't be served. Some of those are unservable warrants. However, that is a huge burden to put back on the sheriff's department. If you look at the next page that I gave you, it's highlighted. Some of y'all have multicolor, some of you have in pink. The short story of that is this was someone who was ROR'd. It's supposed to be misdemeanors, first offenders, and nonviolent crimes with ties to the community. This person, Zachary Ryan Park, was ROR'd on an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, an aggravated kidnapping, an aggravated robbery, and a theft of property, $1,000 to $2,500. This person was ROR'd on these charges. The pretrial, the vetting process is not being done correctly. It needs more time and it needs better training before y'all vote this in. It is already being a nightmare in Rutherford County. If you look at the next section, some of you have 2, some of you only have 1. This is the one that you should be seeing is Benjamin Nathan Ingram. I've personally bonded Mr. Ingram out quite a few times myself. I stopped bonding him out because he had a very bad drug problem. He's been arrested 14 times. He was ROR'd. And some of those are felony drug charges. This gentleman right here, Chad Barber, was arrested 11 priors, has felony charges in 4 counties, and has felony charges in 4 counties, has served felony time in Rutherford County, and he was ROR'd April 4th. This person has, and if you look on the back page, you will see what his charges are. Carrying a weapon on school grounds, felony possession of cocaine, resisting arrest, simple possession of Schedule 3. And that's only one of many charges that he has, and he was ROR'd. This vetting process is not being done right, and if you turn pretrial over to the Rutherford County Jail, it's going to be a nightmare. Thank you for your time, guys.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Next, we have Mr. Mario Hambrick. Mr. Hambrick, you're recognized and well.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, I would just submit that please look at this seriously. Basically, when these people are released, if they have no responsibility of family or anyone who makes sure they go to court, they won't go. And most of these people who are arrested, they have serious issues, drugs, and they have problems. And so therefore, if they have no responsibility or no one to basically make them go, they're not going to go. And basically, it's going to affect the way of life of people in this county. As far as thefts and every different thing, I mean, we do this every day. These people will tell you anything to get out of jail. And Davidson County, anything goes. That's why the place is just out of control. It's like the new Memphis, because everything's out of control. So if you do not want everything out of control in Rutherford County, you would probably not want to go with this program. Now, if you choose to, it needs to be specific things put in place, like first offense, maybe DUIs, public intox, or something of that nature. But anything else, it'll be just like Davidson. Anything goes. People know that they can go to Davidson and do anything, and Darren Hall's going to let them go, and the judge is just going to let them walk. So if you want to basically protect the way of life for the people in Rutherford County, I would go in a different direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hambrick. Next on our agenda, members, is elections and confirmations. I'll call on Steering Vice Chairman, Commissioner Craig Harris.
Commissioners, you'll see a list of notaries. on your iPad. I move for their approval.
Have a motion, and I have a second. Any questions? Without objection, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
I'd like to announce some vacancies on boards. I'd like to announce a vacancy on Public Building Authority to fill unexpired term of Stephen Waldron. This term will expire January of 2020. I would also like to announce the County Coroner vacancy to fill unexpired term of Mike Nunley to expire December 2020. I'd like to announce 2 vacancies on the Library Board, terms to expire June 2022, and announce 1 vacancy to fill expired of Jamie Burris, term to expire June 2020. I would also like to announce 2 vacancies on the Community Care Board. We need to fill a vacancy on the Board of Zoning Appeals, term expire October 2020. Steering Committee recommends Amber Brown. I move for her approval.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions? Without objection, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
We'd also like to announce the appointment of Judicial Commissioner for Smyrna General Sessions Court, Brandy Dover.
Have a motion?
For approval.
Have a motion and a second. Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Christensen, this was an issue that was brought up at Steering Committee. Commissioner McAdoo asked why the County Commission elects the town of Smyrna as judicial commissioners, and I asked Mr. Christensen to look into that, and I think he's got an answer for your question tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner. Under TCA 40-111, judicial commissioners are a creature of statute, and they are county officials. So it is this body that appoints them for, I believe, 4-year terms and then reappoints them. And there is support in AG's opinion to have those judicial commissioners serve in city courts. Other counties and cities across the state have that sort of arrangement, but they remain county officers.
Any other questions? Commissioner Harris? Thank you. Yes, sir. Commissioner Rather, you're recognized.
If you don't mind, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about. The Public Safety Committee approved the pretrial release program, if I understand. A lot of folks showed up thinking we were going to vote on that tonight. It's not me, but could somebody kind of explain to them the process and when that time may come so that they can kind of stay informed what we're doing and when we're doing it? Is that possible?
Sure. Chairman P.
One thing I do want to mention, although it's not on the agenda as pretrial release, our first resolution, assuming everything on the consent agenda passes, is to hire 3 or to fund 3 positions to assist our judicial commissioners that would actually start this process. So it is on the agenda, just wasn't under pretrial release. This is actually hiring 3 assistants between now and the end of June, which is about $13,000 between now and the end of the year. That's being proposed in the New Year's budget. Lisa, did I get that straight? All right, thank you.
And Chairman P., do you anticipate more meetings with the group that you've had 1 meeting, is my understanding, is that correct?
Well, my understanding, this will launch to the project once we get these people in place to work with the judicial commissioners. And I can go in, we're in the middle of something else. I can talk for an hour here and give statistics also, but we are trying or planning on starting the program with these 3 people to assist the judicial commissioners who've already been trained to do this job. And we're going to look at it to see if it needs tweaking. We may need more people. One gentleman mentioned that somebody gets arrested on Friday night. Well, we've talked about that, and one of those 3 people that we're looking at tonight would be taking care of that problem. At any rate, there's a lot more discussion there, but as far as the pretrial release program, we would initially start it by hiring these people.
So it kind of kicks it off, but I guess listening to our constituents out here, would it be possible for them to have a voice at the table at maybe a public safety meeting and let them give their opinion? You know, it's going forward, what you're saying tonight is, but in order to let them come to the meeting and subcommittee meeting on public safety. Would you like to yield?
I'll yield.
Yield to Commissioner Gurley. Commissioner Gurley, you recognize.
Yes, you know, this came up in public safety. Pretrial releases, as I understand, it's going on right now, and as indicated by some of the members of the audience, is not necessarily working well. And we don't want it as a county, we don't want it to go the route that Nashville's gone and some other cities. And the idea in getting these counselors and so on is to set a strict criteria, and I'd be happy to hear, and I'm sure other members of the Public Safety Committee would be happy to hear those criterias. I don't want someone with some of the charges that have been indicated here being released pre-trial. It's not my desire to have those types of people on the streets, especially without a bond. But by hiring these counselors and vetting, and that's what's not happening right now. We don't have any process to vet these people. So we'll be vetting these people, and some of these people, as indicated also, do have serious problems, mental health, drug problems, and so on, and that we can refer them into some of the courts and some of the programs that we have right now. That was my understanding for hiring these 3 people, and in order to make this work and make it work right, not just random pretrial releases is happening right now.
If we could, when we get to Budget Committee, we can debate that. We do have our public hearing coming up, but let me, if that's okay?
That's what I was going to suggest. Let's wait until this comes up in budget here in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
I think I can answer most of these questions.
Sure.
I have no problem bringing this back to public safety as long as our chairman is okay with that.
Okay. All right. Is that okay with you, Mr. Chairman? Okay. Members, we did not take a vote. We had a motion and a second on Brandy Dover as Judicial Commissioner. So we did have a motion and a second. Without any questions and without objection, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. So we'll bring that back up or defer to the next meeting on public safety to allow the bondsman to come and speak. Members, we're a few minutes late on our public hearing for rezoning request. So I call on our County Planning Director, Mr. Doug DeMasi.
Thank you, Mayor Ketchen, and good evening, Mayor and County Commission members. Hope everybody's doing well today. We have 2 public hearings for your consideration tonight. Both of them are along Sulphur Springs Road. The first of them is located around the vicinity and part of the property of 4483 Sulphur Springs Road. The existing zoning is residential medium density RM. The proposed zoning is commercial services. The total amount of area to be rezoned is 16.5 acres. The applicant, Mr. Will Jordan, is proposing to zone the subject properties commercial services. There are no development plans currently, so you don't have a concept plan on your iPads. The application states that since the property is adjoining Interstate 840 and property next door is already zoned commercial services, they thought it would be appropriate to rezone for a future use. The closest non-residentially zoned property is located immediately to the west of this property, which was rezoned back in 2017. We recently received a site plan for that property. We have reviewed it. That's not going to be going to the Planning Commission. The applicant has asked for it to be removed for some other extenuating circumstances. A site plan has also been submitted for a convenience market, which was approved for property across the street and to the east at 4450 Sulphur Springs Road, but there's no construction that has started to date. As far as access and parking, this does have access to Sulphur Springs Road either directly or via the existing frontage roads, which are county right-of-way. Staff will require a traffic study for any development proposed on this property, considering its proximity to the existing interchange at 840 and potential turning movement issues at Frontage Road J, which is one of the frontage roads there. Staff will also require testing to be done on the frontage road to make sure the ability for it to handle increased traffic. The larger tract also has frontage along Sulphur Springs Road. Well, it does, but that part of the property is not anticipated to be a portion of this property that's being rezoned. It's not part of the request. Landscaping, if this is to be rezoned, would require a Type 2 buffer adjacent to residentially zoned properties. Again, that would be confirmed for during a site plan review to the Planning Commission, as well as the performance standards as far as dust, noise, odors, and those type of things. This area is in a state of transition. Commercial uses already exist to the east of this property, and additional property to the west and the northeast have also been rezoned the same classification. And we do believe also that this is consistent with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. Most of the comments at the public hearing regarded drainage issues on this property and their potential impact on the surrounding properties. There was concerns brought up that the property was going to be used for some specific uses that wouldn't be allowed in that zoning, so that was discussed briefly. Staff did explain that any drainage issues would be handled during the site plan review stage should a development plan be submitted, but again, as of right now, we're not seeing that. Staff also explained the zoning of the property, again, would not be appropriate for some of the other uses that were thought to be planned for that particular property. Following discussion, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this request by a unanimous vote, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. DeMasi from the commissioners? Commissioner Piercy, you recognized.
Under commercial services, what is allowed in that zoning?
Various amount of retail type uses. The big difference between commercial services and say commercial neighborhood, general retail is not limited to 5,000 square feet under commercial services like it is under commercial neighborhood. You can have things like auto repair businesses, I mean various uses like that. We have 3 different commercial classifications. This is kind of what I would call our middle of the road zoning classification, but you won't see heavier commercial uses. You won't see things like car lots and things like that. Vehicular trade or vehicular sales, anything like that, or nor will you see any kind of industrial uses on that property. They're not permitted. And residential uses are not permitted in that zone either.
So there's no way possible anything dealing with county trash, anything like that could be have to be on the industrial?
Correct. The specific use that was mentioned at the public hearing dealt with a transfer station. Right now, we don't even have regulations for those, but I would anticipate when we create regulations for those, that would be an industrial type use.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Mr. DeMasi?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Rather, you recognize.
Based on part of the conversation Commissioner Piercy had and a promise made by Mr. Jordan not to put in the rumored transfer station, I move to approve this.
We have a public hearing. We have to have a public hearing first.
We do.
I'll hold my motion off just a few minutes. I'll be right back.
Okay, at this time, I'll call the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners meeting into recess to hold a public hearing on this request. The public hearing is now in session. Anyone desiring to speak for or against this issue, please come forward. State your name, address, and whether you are for or against the proposed request. Hi.
My name's Gerald Dickinson. I live at 4320 Sulphur Springs Road. I've lived there half my life. I love where I live. Leanna's a great community. We need growth like Blackman asked 4 years ago, and we got it. We got Dollar General, and it's wonderful. 3 years we've had it. I save about 12 times a week going to town. It saves traffic, which we all need. I happen to own 8.5 acres in that neighborhood I've had for 34 years. When I bought it, a half an acre was zoned commercial for a restaurant. It has a commercial septic system. I have the paperwork. It has the utilities hooked up. It was never used. I was told that this property being zoned commercial, even though it wasn't used, wasn't taxed as commercial. So I just paid my regular taxes. Now I'm retired. If I want to use it, I was told last week that the county rezoned the area without me knowing it, no letter. Sorry, you didn't read the paper. We took that away from you. This property now, which I used to own, and I wish them all the luck, wants its own commercial without paying taxes, no plan, what they're going to do with it and let it sit. Number one, why was mine taken away from me? Number two, why should I vote for the next guy? Now we got another problem. Leanna, back in 1985, I worked for Nissan hauling automobiles with a tractor trailer. I drove from that plant coming up George Franklin Road, 2-lane road, no 840, swerving trees not to hit the cars to get home, park my truck. If it rained 3 days, you couldn't go down Sulphur Springs Road by Shacklet Road because it flooded, and the last flood lasted a week. I know that because I lost an 85 four-wheel drive truck that sat there half an hour in 2 foot of water. An hour later, when I come back with a wrecker, it was underwater. It was gone. So 840 came through, and that alleviated a lot of traffic. You didn't have to go to Thompson Lane when Sulphur Springs Road was flooded, all the way through Murfreesboro to go to Smyrna, the way it used to be. Now we got another problem. Sulphur Springs Road is 2-lane, WL line and a blind curve to a 3-way stop, which is a disaster. Between 3 and 6 o'clock, I've sat there and counted, there's roughly 115 cars every 10 minutes comes through that little intersection. It's a disaster. If someone breaks down in that 2-lane road, take a nap. That's what happens. Take a nap, because nothing's going to move. I came here tonight at 5 o'clock. I left at 5:15. The traffic was backed up a mile on 840, waiting to get off Sulphur Springs. It was backed up from the light on Thompson and Broad, back up to 840, waiting to come here. Thompson Lane was backed up halfway up to Haynes Road, 2-lane antique road. Why are we putting in more property in this county on a country road that needs to be changed? I mean, Blackman cried about that access to 840, and they got it and made a difference. Why are we there's one property, the old Triway Market, bought last year, zone commercial. Property next to it, 6 acres for a gas station, bought zone commercial. 2 properties across the street want to be zone commercial. Everything from Triway Market, the 3-way stop, to 840 wants to be commercial, and 2-lane road. That's all I ask. It doesn't make sense. I'm not asking you to turn it down. I'm asking you to consider the traffic that the locals that love where they live have to deal with every day. And one more thing, on the other end, coming from Alder Hill, 2-lane road, WL line, the John Tilford Farm has 600 houses. Mrs. Young's property that was sold a few years ago on Central Valley has 300 new houses. 900 people a day come to that 3-way stop at 5 o'clock. It's crazy. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
So, Mr. Davidson, let me ask you very quickly, are you for or against? Or are you just making statements?
I'm making my statement, Mayor.
For or against?
I asked the county to consider the traffic before they vote this through.
Okay.
So
Thank
I guess
you,
you would
sir.
say, take it whatever way you want to take it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Anyone else desiring to speak for or against the issue, please come forward and state your name, address, and whether you're for or against the proposed request. Mr. Reed, welcome. You're recognized.
Mayor, I think you know who I am from school. My name's Bill Reed. I own approximately 4 different farms in Leanna, small farms that total approximately 100 acres. Currently live at 4340 Sulphur Springs Road. I own 4383, 4337, and 4317 Sulphur Springs Road that backs up to Mr. Jordan's property that he's asking to be zoned commercial. Am I for or against part of his property? I'm 100% for him commercializing it. property that is known as the Jack House and John House property behind my property, I'm 100% against. I come to you with 13 years experience as a hydraulic engineer, 11 years experience as a state certified OSHA and NFPA law codes enforcer. I have asked Mr. Doug DeMosi if he will put some pictures up on the board of some flooding conditions. Flooding is my concern with the project on the John House property. It doesn't just affect Mr. Jordan's property and my property. There are 6 holes, open ground window holes, 6 major holes between Nicest Mill and Alford Road on Sulphur Springs Road. If you recall this winter, we were on the news 4 nights. Sulphur Springs Road closed due to flooding. There are 4 areas that will flood that cars cannot ford. Just one area happened to be for several days. Not only does water go in these holes, when Stones River rises, water comes out of these holes. That's the problem. The only way you can fix it is stop Stones River. Every one of you know that's not going to happen. Now, there are 6 principles of hydraulics. Don't have time to go through all that. I'm going to narrow it down and talk about 3 of them. 1 basically says water's going to the lowest point. Everybody agree to that? Those open groundwater holes are the lowest point. Another principle says that the pressure of water is equal in all directions. Doesn't matter which way it goes, it's going to go with the same amount of pressure. 3, it's going to take the shape of its container. Now I'm going to use this term as a cup, because a cup has a handle on it, and you as the county commission tonight have a handle on this thing. You can stop it before it costs this county multiple millions of dollars in road damage, road building and construction, flooding, to some elegantly nice homes. Now, you tie 6 cups together, and the pressure is going to the very bottom of each one of those cups. And then as that pressure continues to build and it fills those containers, it's going to level in all of those containers. When it gets completely full, it's going to overflow all of those containers. Now, if it goes into the first container at a rapid enough pace, it will overflow that container before it gets to the 6th one, because it will take a time of travel distance. Now, that's why what we call the John Stockard hole floods first. That's the first hole from Stones River on Sulphur Springs Road. That's why it begins to flood out and stay flooded longer. You have the control. If you will look at some of these pictures, the picture to the left is my property, which adjoins the property to the right, which is part of the flooding condition in 2019. The picture to the right is the actual Jordan property. There are some other pictures, Mr. Mosley, if you will bring some more of those pictures. You will notice, even on my cap, it's called Shady Creek Farm. It's called that because there is a creek You see it going from my property in the picture on the left into the wooded property of Mr. Jordan on the left. That is flooded area already. I have lived on that property for 61 years. That creek has never been dry. You can go out there and there's places in that creek you can step off and go above my waist. There are places on Mr. Jordan's property that I went out in water above my waist, and I think some of his family members have been in water out there above their waist. And there's no way you're going to stop it unless you stop Stones River. Now, you can stop it on the Will Jordan place, yeah. But when you close that cup up to the Will Jordan place, you decrease it from 6 cups to 5. But you got the same volume of water. So what does that mean? The area of flooding in the other 5 locations gets bigger. Another place, the city of Murfreesboro has passed to build Cherry Lane. They are going through or close by one of those open holes on the Bill Mingle place at the intersection of Alford Road and Sulphur Springs Road. I don't know what their construction plans are. That's one of 6 holes. If Will Jordan closes up his hole and the city closes up a hole on Cherry Lane project, that's 2 out of 6 holes closed. 4 holes are going to flood more. That water, people, is going to go somewhere. You have a handle on the cup tonight that you can stop this project. You can stop it. Why zone something commercial that you don't even know why it's going to be zoned commercial? You don't have a clue. You don't have any kind of plan in front of you, none whatsoever. If Mr. Jordan pulled the John House property off of his proposal, I'd be for him zoning the Homestead place, the Dickerson place. That's high ground. I don't see any problem with that. He bought it. He deserves to make all the money off of it he can. But this county commission does not have the right to commercialize that and push all that water back on a place that I've worked 61 years to build. And I'm a whole lot older than that. And I'm going to live longer too. This thing is a lifetime. People years ago, why was the John, even when it was Jack House's place, why was it not touched? Most of you in here probably sitting right back on a college education. And most of those people never finished the 3rd grade. But they had enough sense to stay out of the wetland, people, because you can't stop a river. It's that simple. That land has been undeveloped for hundreds of years. You go in there and commercialize it, whatever now, you're pushing that water on somebody else. It's that plain, it's that simple. There are other pictures. Mr. Mosey, if you'll show more, look at the water we're talking about, people. I want you to understand something. Do you have any idea how much 1 inch of rainfall in an hour will produce of groundwater on an acre of concrete and asphalt? Anybody got a clue? In excess of 100,000 gallons of water per hour. And I have seen it rain 5 and 6 inches of rain in a day in Murfreesboro, Rutherford County, Tennessee, many times in my lifetime. You're talking about in excess of 500,000 gallons of water. You want that in your house? You want it in your hayfield? You've got a handle on the cup tonight. You need to stop it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
On the John or Jack House property, the wooded area, Mr. Ketchum, I'm 100% against it. On the Dickerson property, the Homestead property, I'm all for it. Appreciate it very much. We need a convenience store out there. We need a gas station. The Tumberland, Cece Tumberland's, I don't know what her other name was now, but that property that Mr. Keith Strain bought, I'm all for him developing it. I'm not against development. I'm the man that helped put the Dollar General store in Leanna. I'm not against development, but I'm against abuse of other people's rights. And it's not right to develop something that's going to damage and cost my county. I didn't move here from the north. I didn't come here from India or Mexico. I was born and raised right here in Murfreesboro, Rutherford County, Tennessee, and I got lines in my hands like road map lines from working and cleaning land right here in Rutherford County. This is my home. Will Jordan, I've known him ever since he was a little boy. His brother Buddy and his daddy Ed Jordan, I thought walked tall. Will Jordan's wrong on that piece of ground paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Anyone else desiring to speak for or against this issue? I think your name's been called. Mr. Jordan, you're recognized in the well.
Mayor Ketchum, Commissioners, I appreciate you being here. I agree with most everything Mr. Reed said. This piece of property, it's 2 pieces of property actually. It's 2 acres up on the access road right beside 840, and then about 14 acres in these woods. And the majority of this woods is a big hole, big bowl. But there's a few acres up on the top that adjoins the other property. That's why we put these 2 pieces of property together, because some of that ground, very little, 20% or something of it is usable. We have no intentions of filling this hole. This is a lake, basically, a lot of the year. It's a big bowl. If you filled it up, you would flood half of Leanna. No intentions whatsoever to fill that bowl up. That bowl will not be touched. Who knows, maybe 100 years now, somebody build a bridge across it if the property got to be valuable enough, but there's no way to fill that bowl. We have no intention of filling that bowl. We do want to be able to use the front part and the higher ground. There's a big slope on this property goes down in this bowl. Some of that property, like I said, is good to use, and we could hopefully utilize some of that bowl for our detention or retention area on the property. But we're not trying to do anything to flood anybody out. We're not going to do anything to flood anybody out. We've owned this property for one tract for 15 years, one tract for 20 years. The property across the street came through a couple of years ago, rezoned commercial services, and the piece next door is being rezoned the next public hearing. We just thought it'd be a good time to bring it through. It's right beside 840. Nobody wants to build a house and live right there. We're not going to flood Mr. Reed out. We're going to be good neighbors. I've been out there my entire life also. I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Anyone else desiring to speak for or against the issue? Point of order.
This will be very
Commissioner.
short, very sweet.
Point of order.
Sir,
Commissioner Reed.
Listen,
Mr.
I'm a
Reed.
horse trainer.
Mr. Reed.
I bring one of my horses up here on the square of
Mr. Reed.
Murfreesboro and pull the bridle off of it.
Mr. Reed.
He can run anywhere he wants to.
Mr. Reed, I'm going to have to ask you to...
If you zone
Mr.
the
Reed.
whole thing.
Mr. Reed, please.
Wait a minute. You promised me time. You did. I want
You have
just a
had your
minute.
time. The commission has mentioned a point of order.
Why
Mr.
not
Reed, I'm
have
going to have
this
to ask you
man,
to
if
step
he
down,
wants a
please.
little bit of the high ground on that property,
Mr.
have him
Reed.
survey it and come back.
Mr. Reed, please. Mr. Reed, please.
Sir, you are wrong. I have a right as an American citizen.
And you did, and we have to keep, and we have to keep the quorum, please. Mr. Reed, please step down.
You're wrong, Bill Ketchum.
You're not recognized, Mr. Reed, please.
You're wrong. People, if you vote for that, you're wrong. They can survey it, come back with specific requests.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. We appreciate you. Thank you, sir. Anyone else speaking for or against on this issue? Seeing no one coming forward, I declare the public hearing closed. Rutherford County Commission is back into session. Do I hear a motion? Commissioner Phillips.
There's a lot of property that has significant water issues. This may be one of the worst, but it's not developable. It can't be developed, in my mind, from a residential perspective, but it does have some commercial potential. We've heard a lot of comments about water. Before anything could be put on this piece of property, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. DeMosi, before anything could be put on this piece of property, the developer, in this case Mr. Jordan, would have an engineering firm do work that would require the holding of that water on that piece of property. There would have to be submitted a plan, a site plan would have to be submitted to our planning commission, and our county engineer would also look at that engineering and would not approve any building on that piece of property that would not meet our county written standards. So everything that we've heard, the Planning Commission is aware of. The only logical use for that piece of property is commercial, with much engineering that would go into it. And not only do I trust a lot of the engineers in this county, but I trust our county's engineer to make sure that all that water would be retained on that property just exactly the way that it is right now.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rather, you recognized.
It's shock, but I do agree with a few things Mr. Reed brought up, because I live out there as well. I drive that route every day. My wife drives it every day, and there are cars back down 840, all the way down side 840. It is kind of a nightmare at certain times of the day. So I would like if Doug could address, if these properties are rezoned, what road improvements may be made, or any future plans from 840 all the way through.
Mr. DeMasi?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Sulphur Springs Road is on the county's long-range transportation plan for an eventual 5-lane widening. Now, there is no design for that improvement right now, but something that we would look at with any development on this, and I stated this earlier in my staff comments, is right now, we wouldn't require a traffic study just because we don't know exactly what's going to be on the property. But depending on what use is submitted to us, and considering the location of this in vicinity to the 840 interchange, and the fact that it's got the frontage road right there, we've already seen a traffic study for the property immediately to the west of this. I would anticipate seeing a traffic study for any development that would ever come of this particular property. If right-of-way dedication is needed, that is also something that we would require during the site plan review process. The right-of-way in that area is really wide because it's getting into the state right-of-way there for 840 and starts kind of necking back down. I don't remember exactly what it is right in the front, but whatever right-of-way would be necessary, we can ask for that dedication as well. But again, there is an eventual 5-lane section, and it's not just on our plan, it's on the city's plan as well. The routes are a little bit different, but hopefully with the upcoming budget, we've set aside some funds to begin a process of updating our long-range transportation plan as well as our comprehensive plan that would help us with that. Does that answer the question you had?
Mr. Gurley?
Yes, I know some property out near me was rezoned, annexed into the city of town of Smyrna, and it has some wet weather places on it. This is obviously wetlands, pretty much. It holds water most of the time. Would this not go to TDEC? I know out there was a public notice and public comments from TDEC, which goes back to EPA and all that on this. Is that something the county keeps an eye on and everything too?
Well, part of what we look at when we look at site plans, there's a website that I know Mike Hughes, our engineer, looks at very frequently that shows potential wetlands or identified wetlands through TDEC. When those are identified, those become part of our staff comments to say, okay, this is something you need to look at.
Or not?
I don't recall there being an actual wetland on the property. Now, that is something, again, that, I mean, the zoning's not going to affect that, but if any development ever comes in, that's something we'll look at. I don't recall that being the case, but if it is, it's a freshwater type situation from the sinkholes Mr. Reed was referring to. And, I mean, when it comes to sinkholes, I mean, I think we all know that's just a way of life in Rutherford County. When we look at development, we deal with that pretty much on a daily basis. We understand that there is water flowing from Mr. Reed's property onto this property, and the way our regulations are written, there's not going to be any development that's going to cause any more water onto adjacent properties than was already going onto adjacent properties. But to answer your wetland question, that's something that they'll have to take into consideration with the site plan.
Yeah, I believe the regulations say that you can't, if this whole parcel is zoned commercial and it's owned by the same owner, you can't add any more water to someone else's property.
Correct. Yes.
But you add water to that, and then it gets to be kind of a tenuous.
Well, and that's where it gets into detention and retention. Now, I'm not an engineer, so I'm kind of speaking a little bit outside of my realm of experience and expertise, but when it comes to detention and retention, of course, when you're putting buildings and paved parking areas, yes, you are increasing the amount of potential runoff because that water is no longer going into the soil. It's running off somewhere else. Even with that hole there may be the need for additional detention ponds, retention ponds, whatnot, to help offset any increase in drainage from the development of the property.
Anyone else? Questions for Mr. DeMasi? Thank you, Mr. DeMasi. No, sir. No, sir. You're out of order. Please, sir. Mr. Reed, you're out of order. Members, you've heard the positive recommendation from the Planning Commission and Mr. DeMasi. Is there a motion?
Chairman, I make the motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions? Further discussion? Without objection, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Mr. DeMasi, you recognized in oil.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We have one more rezoning for your consideration tonight. This is actually property immediately to the east of the property that was just considered. This property is at 4473 Sulphur Springs Road. Again, the existing zoning is residential medium density, and they are asking for commercial services zoning similar to the request you just considered. A concept plan has been submitted and is included with your agenda packets that is on your iPads. They're looking at the potential use as a convenience market. Now, again, if this were to be approved, they would have to submit site plans for our department's review. Most of the conditions with this particular piece of property are pretty much identical to the last property, so I won't go into just a whole lot of detail about that. Access, landscape, performance standards. If you have specific questions on that, I'll be more than happy to answer them. But like I said, it's pretty much identical what they're asking for, and the situation out there, since these are immediately adjacent, there's really not a whole lot of difference between the last request and the one we're considering right now. Again, we do believe this is an area in transition. Most of the discussion on this item was focused on the drainage of the property, like we've discussed tonight, and the sinkhole drainage systems. Again, and this is something I mentioned just a little while ago, staff explained that any development plans would have to be approved through the site plan review process, where county requirements would have to be met. That includes drainage, retention, detention, seeing where there's any additional water going off site, making sure that doesn't happen. So after the public hearing, the Planning Commission did vote to recommend approval, again by a unanimous vote, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. DeMasi from the commissioners? Seeing none, I'll call the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners meeting in recess to hold a public hearing for this request. Public hearing is now in session. Anyone desiring to speak for or against this issue, please come forward. State your name, address, and whether you're for or against the proposed request. Seeing no one coming forward, I declare the public hearing closed and Rutherford County Board of Commissioners back into session. Do I have a motion on the positive recommendation? Is there a motion? Commissioner Rather.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion to approve this request.
Have a motion, and we have a second. Any questions or discussion? Without objection, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Mussey. Members, you have before you the resolution to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Commissioner Phillips.
Mayor Ketron, I've reviewed that consent agenda. I find all of the items to be appropriate and move that the consent agenda be adopted as presented.
Move for adoption and a second. Any questions or discussion? Second was Mr. Swindle. Any questions or discussion? Without objection, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. All opposed? Excuse me. Roll call. I'm sorry. Everybody had their finger on it, right? I understand. Roll call. Commissioner Jernigan, just barely tap it. Just barely tap it. Just barely tap it. There you go.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record to vote.
20 yes, 0 no. Motion passes.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. We have no unfinished business at this time. Reports from standing committees. Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee. Chairman P.
Well, we've got a fairly short agenda tonight. And as we mentioned a little bit earlier, one of the things that we are considering is hiring some assistance to judicial commissioners. I'm going to go ahead and make this motion, and then, whatever discussion y'all like to have, we'll go from there. The resolution, therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the general fund be amended as follows. General sessions, increase expenditures, other salaries and wages, $11,500. Social Security, $715. Pension, $1,230. Disability insurance, $25. Employer Medicare, $170. And a decrease to the unassigned fund balance of $13,640. And what that amount is 3 positions to assist our current judicial commissioners who already are in place to help them on pretrial. The second thing that we're looking here at tonight is autopsies. We have an increased expenditure of other services for $110,000, and we have a decrease of unassigned fund balance of $110,000. And again, this is for autopsies. Resolved the 16th day of May, 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Mr. Johnson. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Rather.
Getting tired of seeing me stand up, Mayor.
No, sir.
This first part does deal with the pretrial release, moving forward with that, correct?
It does, in my opinion, and I may need to speak to our attorney and our finance director, but my opinion, this would allow us at least to go ahead and put out advertisement to hire some people. That way we could have people in place in the new budget if this passes our budget process, which is we're ongoing right now. So this hasn't passed budget yet, as I said, and it won't until the 26th of June when we set our tax rate. But this would allow us to go ahead and advertise those positions and get some people in place and possibly train if we decide to go that way.
There's a couple things that we're dealing with that I know it seems time is of the essence, but in reality, we do have some time. It's not like we have to do something by next week. I watched the Public Safety Committee meeting, and I heard some interesting information. However, I was talking to another person earlier this week, and I like to have as much information as possible. So we allowed 6 people 3 minutes to give their side. And I would just like, I don't know what the process would be, whether we back up on this motion, defer it back to public safety if we want to do it here at the commission. I don't know what the process would be, but I would like to have information from the other side, because just since the Public Safety Committee meeting I watched a couple of days ago, I've done a little research in other cities, and I'm seeing conflicting numbers with what's been presented to the committee and what's happening in other states, other municipalities. I watched a video about what's going on in Seattle, and I barely made it through half of it, and I had to turn it off. It was downright upsetting what's going on there. So I guess my request is there any way we could sit down with the other side and let them have the same opportunity that we've let the judicial side, the same opportunity that we've let Mr. Reed and others, but beyond the 3 minutes, and listen to what they have to say.
Mr. Gurley.
Yes, as I think I said earlier, that part of the idea in hiring these people, pretrial release is happening now. It's maybe not happening the way we want it to happen now. So we want to improve that process, both for the citizens who don't commit crimes and the citizens who have committed a crime but may need some help in getting their life back or whatever. So the whole idea, the whole process of this and exactly how this is going to take shape, to my knowledge, has not been set yet. We are going to hire additional staff and so on. It'll come back to public safety, and I'll let Commissioner Reed speak for himself, but I personally, as Vice Chairman of Public Safety, would welcome input, either written before the meeting or Commissioner Reed agrees, suspend the rules at the meeting and have a representative of the bonding community to speak to us and give us more information. We've gotten some information tonight, but I don't know that all the parameters. We'll be working with the courts. We oversee those budgets. This budget, if this don't work, we can unfund it. We don't have to continue funding for it. But the idea is to make the process, this is my understanding, and is to make the process better by funding these additional positions. We'll try to eliminate some of the problems that's occurring with pretrial release right now and avoid some of the pitfalls that have taken place in other entities. Now, if I'm wrong on that, then I stand to be educated. But I think right now we're kind of getting the cart before the horse in that the process has not been totally vetted out as to exactly how it's going to take place. And so we'll go back to public safety, we'll have discussion. Now, all we're doing right now is funding positions till the end of the year to go on and try to hire some people and get them on board as soon as possible. So
Commissioner Gammon, and then Commissioner McAdoo.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm not against the ideology of pretrial conversion. We've worked on these things for many, many, many years. Pre-sentencing, it surprised me that the jails have not got another 400 prisoners, so the judges and everybody have worked closely together. The issue I have of how I thought this was supposed to work was going to be the beginner problems. First-time DUI was, I'm not real popular letting somebody out, without some security idea. But these were supposed to be first-time offenders, and what I'm saying and what I've researched and what I've heard, that's not the case. We have not done a very good job of setting this up to start with once it got put in place. My feeling is that we haven't even asked really the law enforcement community how they feel about it, because I can assure you they don't like it. I can tell you that. And it affects their officers on the street. I've talked to a number of citizens. They don't like it. I mean, it's not that you don't want to try to reduce the size of jail, but when I think about it, all the years I've done budgets, I don't see how it's going to reduce cost in the jail other than increasing cost in the jail, because when these people don't show up, and there's a lot of them that don't at ROR, guess who's got to go get them? It's the sheriff's office. And he doesn't have enough people now. So my feeling is if we do anything, and I'm not saying don't do this, what I'm saying is we need to slow down a little bit, and I agree with Commissioner Gurley, the cart's in front of the horse here, is that we need to have a committee, and I'm not talking about 6 months, I'm saying get some chiefs of police on it, talk to the sheriff, get some commissioners on it, judges, just like we've done your drug courts and everything else, and get some knowledge in this and have a protocol put together, and plus a mission statement before we institute this and start spending money. It may just be $110,000 right now, but how much is it going to be next year? And how many more people is it going to take to fill this gap? Before you know it, you're going to have 12 to 15 employees in this thing. And then all of a sudden, what's the budget then? So you're saying you're going to save money, but you're spending a lot of money. It's two different animals. So my feeling is we need to put this off a little bit. Let's study it. Let's get a committee together. However that process comes about, that's just my feeling. I have no issue with trying to find answers to reducing the people that's in the jail. But a lot of these people in there wouldn't, they've probably been in work, they wouldn't qualify to go to workhouse under the tree that's used. And most people might not understand what that is. But it's a classification system. And when you get somebody out here that's been charged 16 times and you ROR them, that's a problem. Back in the day, the sheriff was allowed to do RORs, and they were done until we were told you can't do it anymore. I would never approve somebody had that kind of record on them. It had to fall back to somebody had residence, family, something, had a job. I hear most of the time that we're trying to save jobs. That may be the case, but most of the cases here, somebody's had 16 charges on them. They ain't got a job, trust me. So, I'm not trying to be bad, I'm just saying that's my feeling.
Commissioner McAdoo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the Public Safety Committee, you got expertise on that committee. Commissioner Gannon, he know I'm looking at him because he's the one that got me started in it. And David got years and years as a bonding agent, as a bonding company owner, and he can definitely head up that study. And that's reading the information coming from public safety to us tonight. I couldn't understand why I didn't hear more from David Gannon, because David Gannon got the expertise, and it goes way, back as far as John Bragg as Virgil know. So we need more time to study it, but you got the expertise on the committee to look at both sides. And I wish you would get David Gannon more involved on that Public Safety Committee with that.
Commissioner Reed, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman,
if I said that this just all of a sudden popped up at public safety and we had a judge come there and said, hey, I want to do this, can we do this? That was not true. This actually started a couple of years ago with our former vice mayor. Started working on this, started working with our judges to see if there could be something else done. Looking at some of these cities, and when they started work back then, looking there. But then Commissioner P mentioned it to me that he'd like to do something on this. He had been checking this out as well. And from there, he started meeting with the judges on a regular basis, presenting his ideas, getting their ideas, and then it did become a committee of different individuals. There was Judge Bennett that sat in on it. Judge McFarland sat in on it. Then the sheriff and members from the sheriff's department was involved in it. I think you had some others that was there too that did this. And what come before the safety committee was that we're talking about getting 3 counselors to put together a program setting qualifiers for first offenders. This is what we're looking at, first offenders, if I'm understanding this correctly. And we're looking at the very same thing that I heard one of the bondsmen get up here and say tonight, that looking at the situations as their first time DUI, where it gives them that opportunity to have that chance to go back out and keep at their job, but yet keeps an eye on them and watches them and not takes them over there and put them in that jail, and they sit there and wait for their turn to come to court. It's that time. And what we were looking at that time and what we're trying to accomplish with this, and this will be determined in the qualifiers, and that's what these 3 counselors are to do, is to come up with these qualifiers, to see what works, to see what we can do to work with these first offenders, where we pull them away from just sending them over to the jail and sitting there until their time comes, where when they get there, they're losing their job, they have the situation, losing their families and things of this type, but yet it gives them opportunity to go on with what they're having to do. And a lot of the times they are individuals, and I heard it said right here that, you know, there's not due to the fact that they don't have the funds or things of this type, but many times it can be, and it puts that on them. And that's what we're trying to prevent, is to put them back, make citizens out of them, and to work with these qualifiers where it does put some requirements on them where they have to do something to make it work right, where they're just not put out there back on the street again, where all of a sudden they do become these 4-time DUI individuals causing our problems and whatever. And that's what this is all about, and what we're trying to do. And I heard it mentioned here, it will cost $110,000. That's for the coroner, is what that figure is, what's been given here tonight. We're talking about the $13,000 that's going to do here to get us to the end of the year to develop, come up with these 3 counselors, to come up with the qualifiers, to come up with a program where we look at something that might work or something that we hope works and go from that direction. So as you said there have been other individuals on this panel working with it. And I have to say, when it went through public safety, we had a unanimous vote from everybody sitting on that panel.
Same thing with budget. If y'all will indulge me, I'd like to talk for just a few minutes and address some of the problems and questions here. First of all, I was listening to a radio program one day, and I heard a thing called the Bail Project. You can go online and look that up. But basically, it was a group of attorneys that got together, and they were seeing people incarcerated that they felt like they didn't need to be incarcerated. You know, they were low-risk people, and so they solicited some funds, basically through private agencies. They were bailing out people, and they found out statistically that about 96 to 98% of the people that they were giving bail to always showed up. They found that what they did, and that's basically what these 3 positions we're talking about does, is they call them a week before, say, hey, remember you got a court date. Hey, the day before, remember tomorrow you got to be in court. And that really, this project's actually gone. It's in New York, it's in California and different places, it's in Chicago, most of the big cities. But there's also other states that handle our bail system differently. But bail was set up to ensure that someone charged of a crime would be there when the judge was ready to look at that. That's all it was made to be. It wasn't made to incarcerate people. But basically what we've done over the years is people are in jail now on what we call in this county pretrial diversion. Out of the 900 and something people in the jail, the last time I talked to the sheriff, and these numbers are a little fluid, you know what I'm talking about, Commissioner Gavin, there were over 600 people on pretrial diversion in our jails. Okay, now we were talking earlier about the money that the states give us. The state gives us, what, 32 or 39 a day to feed these prisoners. The sheriff informed me the other day it costs $60 to $63 a day to feed our prisoners now. Okay, that doesn't count the cost of guards. You know, it goes on and on. Uniforms, space, more power. But we've got 600 people out there that have had bail set for them. Not all of them, maybe, but a large amount of these people would not be in jail if they had the money to bail out. Okay? Now, to me, there's a problem in this country and in this county right here, and I'll get passionate about it. If I don't have the money to get out of jail and you do, you know, we did the same crime, but I'm sitting in jail for 6 months and you're out the next day. There's something not quite right there. And this is kind of, in my mind, something we can do to help that. You get arrested, say a DUI, your first time, okay? Yeah, you did something wrong. And before I go any further, let me say something. I'm one of these guys that thinks if you do the crime, you better be ready to do the time. I've got no sympathy for a criminal. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm talking about people that have been charged, they have never been tried. These people are assumed innocent until they're proven guilty, okay? They're assumed innocent, and I believe in that. And I believe in due process in this country. But basically, these people are locked up. Okay, they don't make it into work the next day, and if they don't make it the second day, more likely they're going to be fired, aren't they, Jeff? Okay? So that's a tragedy for that family, for that person individually, but it also is a tragedy for me and you, because guess who's paying for him to stay in there? You and I are, okay? Regardless of the cost, and I want to talk some more about cost, this is the right thing to do. It's not right to lock up people that have not been found guilty. Now, everybody talks about we're going to have the Wild West, just like Nashville. You know, I was in Nashville here a while back. I didn't get run over by any motorcycles, thank goodness. Yeah, and there's some crazy people running around occasionally. But Nashville's been doing this for over 20 years. Okay, they have a reduced jail population because of that. You know, I don't know all their statistics. Like Commissioner Reed or Chairman Reed mentioned, you know, I started looking at this last September, October, started working with our judges. Our judges are not going to release people willy-nilly in this county that are going to do bad things to our citizens. There is a criteria for anybody that would meet this that is very stringent. You know, we're looking at first-time responders. We're looking at low-level crimes, say a worthless check, maybe a first-time DUI. Guess what? You get out and you get drunk again and you get caught and you want a pretrial diversion? It doesn't happen. No, it does not happen. That's what these three people are for. They're going to check and they're going to question these people when they're coming in and they're arrested, and they've got a checklist and they've got points allotted. Have you ever been arrested before? Well, they don't take their word for it. What is it, NCIC? Is that the correct termination? They check it. They're not taking anybody's word for anything. If they're lying to us, they definitely are not doing it. You know, that doesn't mean that some of these gentlemen back here could go down there and bail them out. They'll have bail set. most of them anyway, but we also are not going to look at anyone that's got any kind of violence. You know, if there's domestic violence, hey, you forget it. We've got nothing to do with a person like that. We're not going to, you know, there's not a first chance, much less a second chance. This is very stringent. You know, our judges are on board with this because they see the cost to the individuals. They see these people on a daily basis. You know, they know who's going to show up, who's not. You know, they know what criteria it would take to make this work. And I'm going to tell you, the judges, it took a long time for them working together with our former deputy mayor to come to this decision to do this. And we want to try it and see how it works. Yes, there may be problems and there may be hiccups. If there are, we're going to tweak them or we're going to end the program. Now let's talk a little bit about money. Okay, talking to the sheriff the other day, the sheriff's department, have identified out of this 900 people there, 75 people that they say probably shouldn't or don't need to be there. So there's 75 potential people that we could pull out if this program was in place tomorrow, that we would no longer be paying for. Now, just statistically speaking with numbers, if we pull 50 people out, that's $60 a day, that's $3,000 a day, that's $90,000 a month. You know, fully funded for 3 people for a year, not the $13,000 that we're looking at tonight, $13,640, would be around $156,000 with the benefits. I think that's pretty close. This program will easily pay for itself with those kind of numbers. I have a feeling that, you know, we may exceed that, we may not. But I think 50 people is a reasonable number or a reasonable expectation of people that could possibly be released on this type program. But again, they have to meet a very strict criteria to qualify for it. And that's what these 3 people are for. They're going to check them. And, you know, as these guys says, people don't show up. Well, they're given the wrong dates sometimes. They forget, just like I forget. I've missed a few commission meetings here and there, and I bet just about everybody sitting here has. But these people's job is going to be to call them and say, hey, don't forget, next week you've got this appointment. You've got to be in court tomorrow. So that's what these people are for. Now, something else I want to mention, this has been posted in our paper. There's been a couple of articles in the paper, and our agenda was duly posted before we had it, the first public safety meeting. I was getting calls from some of the bailsmen, and they were aware of it. They had an opportunity to come to public safety. Well, guess what? About 15 to 30 days later, we saw this in budget, and nobody came to budget, although I did talk to some of them on there. On the phone. So they've had the opportunity to come and give me input, and I've heard some of the input. I've heard the sheriff refute some of this information that you're seeing also. Now, I don't know what's correct, and I'm the kind of guy, I believe you, but I'm also the kind of guy that I go back and check, and people tend not to lie to me because of that, and I've found out in the long run. But what I'm telling you is this has been looked at long and hard by our judges and some of our law enforcement, including the sheriff and several of his men. This is not something that we've come up with overnight. This is something we've studied hard. This is something we've looked at hard. I actually gave out a handout, I think, in public safety of the criteria that they're asking for and how they're graded. So, you know, I can make that available to any of you. Now, I don't have a problem discussing this again, and I welcome the discussion from these folks. You know, if I was a bail bondsman, I'd be pretty upset about this myself because I'm going to lose some business here. You know, Nashville's been doing it for 20 years, and I actually heard a statistic from one of the bondsmen that called me from Miss Hewlin. She said, well, I used to have 120 bails a month, and now I have about 20. So it's reduced. And if that's wrong, that's hearsay that I heard. But like I say, I take everybody's word for what they tell me. And, I'll believe this, but I want to check those statistics. I know the statistics I've heard. I know the money cost that I see, and wipe away the cost. It's the right thing to do. Now, the other thing we hadn't talked about is the jail's overcrowded, and you guys on public safety know that. And the next thing you're going to be seeing, if we can't get this jail population reduced, is the sheriff is going to come asking for a new jail. And that's going to come with a price tag somewhere between $80 and $100 million. So, that's the next thing you can be chewing on. This is part of an attempt to delay that or put it off. So there's a lot of things to talk about here, and again, I would suggest that we go ahead and vote this in to allow us to look at these people, to get them in place. If we decide we don't want it in the new budget, which is coming up, and there'll be discussion in budget on this, then we can vote it down. If we try it and we don't like what we're seeing, if we've got people running wild in the streets, we can definitely pull the plug on it. But personally, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we've done our due diligence. I don't think I've done a good job of reporting that to you. If you had this in your hand, what's the criteria for you to be on here, for you to get this release? Then I think that would give you confidence in what I've got confidence in. And I have confidence in this program, and I feel like our judges do too. But I'd ask for us to go ahead and vote, but still, Commissioner Reed, bring this back up at public safety. I don't mind tweaking it or looking at it as many times as we need to. I think this is something that can be ongoing. We can correct it as we go, or we can do away with it as we need to. But I think it's well worth trying.
Okay, members, I have a motion and a second. Let me tell you where we are. Okay, so you can either vote this up. It's been a lot of discussion. May have forgotten where we were, but we do have a motion and a second. You can vote it up, or you can vote it down, or you can amend the motion to send it back to public safety. That's kind of your options. If the chairman feels there's a cold wind blowing, he can do that, but I think he's just recommended that we go ahead and vote it up or down. And then we can take it up at a later point in time. But we're on the board. I'm going to call Commissioner Gurley. Discussion.
Yes, could we, this being an issue that we're going to vote on the board, could we pull the coroner or the autopsies out separate and vote on that separately from this 13,000?
Maker the motion, you would have to amend the motion.
Yeah, I would like to amend the motion to pull the $110,000 for autopsies out and vote on that separately.
Is there a second? There's a second on the amendment. Everybody understand the motion on the amendment is to withdraw the autopsies out, and a second. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion on the amendment carries. Back to the original motion that we have before us, which is on as currently stated. Right? Madam Clerk, would you read the motion as amended?
In a second. We're currently voting on to resolve by the Board of Commissioners the general fund to amend as follows. They're increasing the general sessions, the expense by $13,640, and they are not voting on the autopsies for $110,000.
That's correct. Okay, we're on the board. Comment? Comment? Commissioner Pearson, you're recognized.
I supported this when it come through budget the other night, and I'm in full support of the idea. But I really think there would be a greater comfort level in this commission and the Bells Bondmans if we could see the criteria that people are going to have to meet to even qualify for this. I have no idea. And other people in here, everybody else may know, but I don't. I don't have any idea the criteria, but I would like to see that before I vote on this. Then I would just be more comfortable with it. Thank you.
Commissioner Gurley.
Yes, that criteria, to my knowledge, has not been established yet. That's the whole idea of getting these
The
three people on board.
criteria has been established, and it was presented at Public Safety.
Any other discussion or going on the board? All right, cast your votes, members. Record the vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
14 yes, 2 no, 2 abstain. Motion passes.
Motion passes. Okay, next motion would be on the corner.
You want me to restate that?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. This will be for increased expenditures for autopsies, other services, $110,000, and a decrease to unassigned fund balance of $110,000. Resolved this 16th day of May 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
I have a motion and a second. You're on the board. Members, cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
20 yes, motion passes.
Our next item has to do with replacing the roof on the Community Care Center. Whereas there is a need to replace a portion of the roof at the Community Care Rutherford County facility on County Farm Road, and whereas it is proposed that Rutherford County enter into an architect agreement with Richard C. Rinks and Associates Incorporated for a fee of 6% of the construction cost to provide professional architect services necessary to complete the roof construction project. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the county mayor and all other appropriate officials of Rutherford County, Tennessee, and are hereby authorized to execute an agreement subject to the approval of the county attorney with Richard C. Rinks and Associates Incorporated, a copy of the same being attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein by reference as if set forth herein at length verbatim. For additionally, that the general fund be amended as follows to appropriate funds for the architect fee, increase expenditures, engineering survey, $39,500, and a decrease to unassigned fund balance of $39,500. Resolved the 16th day of May 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
I have a motion and a second. Commissioner Gurley, you recognize.
Yes, I'd just like to take this time to point out a little irony. A few weeks back, I recommended spending $25,000 on engineering services on a potential $18 million project, and several of my fellow commissioners thought that was a little much. That was 0.015% of the total budget. We're spending 6% of the total budget this project on engineering services, which I don't have anything problem with. It's common, but I'd just like to point out the irony of it. I think there's a lot more people who know how to build a roof than know how to build a digital radio system. So I just want to take that opportunity to point out that engineering services are a vital part of any project.
Comments? Seeing none, we're on the board, members. Please cast your vote. Record the vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote. Madam Clerk.
20 yes, motion passes.
Next, members, is the Health and Education Committee. Chairman Allen, no report tonight. Next, we have Property Management Committee. Commissioner McAdoo, I received a phone call from Mr. Travis Brown. He called and asked if we could roll this till the next full commission meeting. Their attorney for the Rockville Historical Society still had a couple of tweaks that they wanted to make, nothing major, but just it would tweak it to where they could better fundraise for the facility out there at the old Rockville, the lease on the old Rockville store. If you recall, we were going to give it to them, and then at the advice of our attorney, he advised that we don't give it to them because that would include the land underneath it. So we're going to lease it to them for $1 per year, and the county would still retain the property underneath the building. So in the event that something happened to the building, it fell down, blew away, burned up, etc., then the county would still own the property because that's going to be adjacent to our new convenience facility right behind that. So Chairman McAdoo, if you'll make a motion, we'll roll this to the next meeting without objection.
Without objection, I would like to make a motion that we move item on the Property Management Committee concerning Rockville Historical Society and the store to next month.
All right, and we have a second. All of those in favor, any questions or discussion? Seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, members, is item number 4, Public Safety Committee. Commissioner Reed, Chairman, you're recognized.
Commissioners, you have before you a resolution to approve the Fosterville Volunteer Fire Department becoming a part of the Rutherford County Fire and Rescue Department and accepting the transfer of property effective May 1st, 2019. Whereas it is in the best interest of the citizens of Rutherford County for the Fosterville Volunteer Fire Department to become a part of Rutherford County Fire and Rescue Department, and for Rutherford County to accept transfer and conveyance of the assets of Fosterville Volunteer Fire Department. Now therefore be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that Rutherford County accepts the transfer and conveyance of Fosterville Volunteer Fire Department to become a part of the Rutherford County Fire and Rescue Department effective May 1st, 2019. Be it further resolved, the county mayor and other appropriate officials be and they hereby are authorized to execute for and on behalf of Rutherford County, Tennessee, any and all documents required for the transfer of the assets of the Fosterville Volunteer Fire Department. Be it further resolved, the Rutherford County does not accept legal responsibility for any debts, claims, or liabilities of the Fosterville Volunteer Fire Department, including but not limited to the Fosterville Volunteer Fire Department grant staffing for adequate fire and emergency response. EMW 2015 FF 00259. Resolved the 16th day of May 2019. Mr. Chairman, I move for its acceptance.
I have a motion for adoption. Is there a second? And a second. Mr. Irvin, any questions or discussion?
Gentlemen, before you vote, Mayor, if you don't mind, I will tell you that for this department right there, the county will be supplying on weekdays 2 full-time firemen, so that area out there will have firemen in the department at a continuous time, where we were having problems not having available volunteers, and that's the reason for this change. They've had a recent meeting with the board and with our fire chief and individuals and with the mayor. And at the recent meeting, I think they've had up to maybe 14 individuals from the volunteer area that's willing to work with this department to make it a better department for the area out there.
Any other discussion? All right, members, we're on the board. Please cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Commissioner Rather, vote aye. Nay? Yes. Commissioner Rather votes aye. Record the vote, Madam Secretary.
20 yes, motion passes.
Members, next on the agenda is item number 5, Public Works Planning Commission. Chairman Cush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may draw your attention to the Public Works and Planning tab on your pad. First one will be the resolution.
Water die.
This is the groundwater die. Groundwater. That's actually. I can do it on my iPad. There we go. Let me give you a little history first. This resolution is going to basically close the loop of the dye project for sinkholes. We've heard a little bit about sinkholes tonight. This is the sinkhole section along Shores Road. And as you know, Shores Road is prone to flooding. In the May 10th flood, it actually had several homes damaged that became an issue for the county. There is a contract in this resolution for the sum of $16,920 to hire an expert to finish basically almost the entire county now for a dye project, which basically means they put a colored dye in a sinkhole, they follow that tracing all the way and find out where the sinkholes, thank you, Mr. Spence, and find out where this colored dye ends up, and that's how they trace how the underwater rivers transport stormwater from hole to hole. So that's the background of this resolution, so I'll jump right into that. Whereas the attached proposal for groundwater dye tracing along Shores Road to help predict and solve sinkhole flooding problems, prepared by Albert Ogden, Ph.D., for the Rutherford County Planning Commission, a copy of said proposal being attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein at length as set forth verbatim, is in the best interest of the citizens of Rutherford County. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissions that the appropriate officials for and on behalf of Rutherford County be and hereby are authorized to enter into and execute for on behalf of Rutherford County Planning Commission the proposal for Albert Ogden, Ph.D. as presented. Resolved this 16th day of May, 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
I have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, we're on the board. Members, cast your vote. Aye. You vote aye.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote, Madam Secretary.
20 yes, motion passes.
All right, thank you. The second resolution is one that's been a long time coming, and this makes Rutherford County broadband ready. And this is a lengthy 2.5 pages, but I'm just going to read the first 2 paragraphs, unless, Nick, I'm required by law to read the entire thing.
I guess I wouldn't make it a habit, but...
Okay, all right. It's certainly out there for public perusal, so anyone who wants to see the entire thing in its if anybody wants to see it, you can find it on the web. All right. The resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Rutherford County, Tennessee, in support of Rutherford County being designated a broadband-ready community. Whereas Rutherford County, Tennessee finds that broadband internet availability in Rutherford County is of critical importance to all people living, visiting, and doing business in Rutherford County, Tennessee. And whereas the Tennessee State Legislature recently created the ability for Tennessee communities to be designated as broadband-ready communities through the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. And I could go on, but long story short, we're finally there to almost having 100% coverage of broadband internet in the county. That helps lots of people, including our public service folks. Mr. Pettis, Reed, you were well behind this for a long time. Do you have anything to say about that before I say, well, maybe we should vote on it first. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Got a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Commissioner Reed and then Commissioner Girding.
Commissioners, what you have before you is an opportunity for us just to become a broadband-ready community or county. This is a requirement that we will be needing whenever we apply for grants. This is a requirement by the state of Tennessee that Rutherford County be notified or be selected as a broadband ready. Other counties have already put that out there. We don't want to be the last one in line to do this, and this is one of the reasons that we're doing this. We already have Middle Tennessee Electorate and United who are working quite feverishly over in the Iggleville area. They're getting ready to start in that area out there, and whenever they get the opportunity, hopefully in July, to get possibly some of the state grant to work in that area, we want that on that list right there where we can say we are broadband ready.
Mr. Gurley.
Yes, I have a couple of questions and then a concern. Has there been a single point of contact appointed yet for this? Or
Mr. Reed, you aware of one?
No, there hadn't. That will be something that we will have to do through communications, is what we'll have to do, or through the mayor's office.
I believe once we adopt this, then we will submit back. It's my understanding we submit back to the governor's office and let them know who that point of contact would be.
Yeah.
Are you volunteering?
The other question and concern that I have, Section 3, Paragraph 2D, it says discriminate. This is one of the things that we're not supposed to do. Discriminate among communication services providers or utilities with respect to any action related to a broadband project, including granting access to public rights-of-way, infrastructure, and poles, and this is the part that I have a problem with, and any other physical assets owned or controlled by the political subdivision. That, to me, would include our public safety towers. That is an asset owned by the political subdivision. How many are familiar with FirstNet? Well, I'll just bring you up to speed. FirstNet is the broadband dedicated project at a national level dedicated to first responders, to build a nationwide network that will give first responders priority over the average citizen when making a phone call or sending data, etc. The state has already bought into FirstNet, and this may be where one arm of the state may not know what the other arm of the state is doing, and so on. So if we buy into FirstNet, then they've already designated a preferred provider or a provider, and that is AT&T. Wouldn't be necessarily my choice, but that's what was picked by FirstNet. So therefore, I guess this is a question for our attorney. Therefore, if we granted, say, AT&T as part of FirstNet to go on one of our public safety towers and then refused another wireless carrier would be in conflict with this. It gets complicated, I think you can see, but it's a part that when we're giving access to any and all, everything we own. I can understand the telephone poles, but this says, and any other physical assets owned or controlled by the political subdivision. That's pretty broad in my opinion. If I said, you can use anything on my 5.5 acres, that means anything on my 5.5 acres. I have a hard time then saying, no, you can't use that, you can't use that, you can't use that. So you understand where I'm coming from?
I think so. I'll say two things. One, it may be difficult for me to opine on whether or not something is going to be legal based on the facts that you've stated. There's different hypotheticals that we can all throw out. So that'd be number one. Number two, the language here, as I understand it, is straight from the state statute that's cited in there. And I pulled it up, and under B, as one of the requirements, if we're going to be designated as a broadband community, this is something that you have to do. So
I pulled it up too, and that's the reason I made the statement that one arm of the state may not know what the other arm of the state's doing.
So I guess if you alter the language of the resolution in contravention to this state law and then seek approval from the community, the Department of Economic and Community Development, they may spit it back and say, well, you're not approved for a broadband community because your resolution's not in compliance with state law.
I guess my next question is this something that we could ask for an Attorney General's opinion on, because it may affect all the entities in the state of Tennessee.
Well, we in the county cannot ask for an Attorney General's opinion. It would have to go through one of our members of the delegation to request that, and so that would be up to this commission to request one of the members of the delegation to ask for that opinion. And depends on how much juice they have, depends on how quickly you get that opinion back. Any other discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, we're on the board. Cast your votes, members.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote, Madam Secretary.
19 yes, motion passes.
Okay, next, members, we have item number 6, Steering Legislative and Governmental Committee. Chairman Stevens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steering has 2 items for our consideration tonight. One is an action item, the legal services agreement, and then one is simply for discussion. So we'll begin with the legal services agreement resolution. Whereas the attached legal services agreement between Rutherford County, Tennessee and Nicholas C. Christensen and Hudson Reed and McQuarrie PLLC for legal services and representation, a copy of said agreement being attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein at length as if set forth herein verbatim, has been approved by the Steering Legislative and Governmental Committee. And whereas it is in the best interest of the citizens of Rutherford County for the county to enter into said agreement for the providing of legal services. Now therefore be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that Rutherford County hereby approves the legal services agreement with Nicholas C. Christensen and Hudson Reed and McQuarrie PLLC for legal services and representation. Resolved the 16th day of May 2019. And Mr. Chairman, I make the motion for that approval.
We have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Questions or discussion? Commissioner Rather, you're recognized.
Is it appropriate for me to come to the podium? I'll explain why I want to get there.
You're asking permission to come to the well. You're recognized.
to go ahead and explain. A few of you know this, and this is nothing that I really advertise, but some of you may notice I shake. So I've been diagnosed with essential tremors that I'd never heard of till 2 or 3 years ago. So hopefully some Vanderbilt neurosurgeons will help with that towards the end of the summer. So the reason I wanted to come up here is because I can't hold this piece of paper and a microphone and read the piece of paper. If I hold the microphone over here, it's probably going to hit somebody in the head. So thank you for allowing me to come up here.
Yes, sir, you're recognized.
I am on the steering committee. I had some questions at the steering committee. I felt comfortable with the answers of most of them. Unfortunately, and this has happened to me 2 or 3 times, it's after the meeting, after the committee meeting, is when I start getting a lot of phone calls or emails that bring up other questions. And so I hate going through all the process on the committee level as you've experienced, Mr. Reed, Commissioner Reed, and others, only to have things questioned. But I feel like I have to do it. I'm going to save the first paragraph for last. And again, several of these things were discussed. A few of these things were discussed at that meeting. And I brought this one up. The LSA states the attorney's compensation be handled like an employee, and I quote, in order to assist with internal payroll practices. Ms. Stevenson explained that to me, and I understood what she was talking about, that amount of money was divided by 12, and you just got that check every month. That's the way I understood it and the way her payroll system was set up. But I go back and I look at it and think about it, I still don't understand it, as I'm sure we have other independent contractors we compensate, which clearly proves our internal payroll system can handle one more. If someone, regardless of the service or services they provide, is considered an independent contractor, then they should be handled in every area as such. I'm confused how we can legally or otherwise handle an independent contractor as an employee or an employee as an independent contractor. I know that can get you in a lot of trouble, but that's not what we're doing. You're either one or the other, not a combination of the two. Going a little further, the agreement clearly states Mr. Christensen is an independent contractor. I know we've received some information from the RNA, so I'm going to exclude some of this from the information I've received from the RNA, because many folks in my district and even other parts of the community in some of y'all's districts that know me or know my family, I've had some discussions with, and they're kind of upset about the health and life insurance. And I, again, brought this up at the steering committee meeting, and I said then, that's not something that's going to cause me to vote no. However, after I don't know how many discussions, several of these folks I talked to are employees of this county, or even questioning the legality and possible exposure the county may face from other independent contractors whom we do not offer those benefits. The employees I have been in contact with are losing confidence in this body to do the right thing when we disallowed certain spouses from the benefit plan, then voted to provide those benefits to ourselves, the Highway Commission, the school board, and now an independent contractor. The truth is, simply because the previously mentioned groups are paying certain insurance costs each month, it does not mean it costs the county nothing. Claims are the factor in the rate increases, and the more people, the higher the risk. I use it like this. Hurricane Michael hit Florida. It could affect somebody's homeowner's insurance in Tennessee. That's how they spread that loss out, or those claims. I would ask each of you to try to put yourselves in those employees' shoes. Additionally, an employee whose spouse is now paying for insurance with their employer, and let's use the amount of $400 per month, because I know that to be a fact in one case. And the fire station has been closed or a truck moved. Mr. Reed and I have recently discussed this, causing the homeowner's insurance to increase. This will cost them an additional, and I've heard anywhere from $200 and $420 a month. One of the most recent phone calls I got from a lady in Walter Hill was in tears. Then, in addition to all that, in the near future, will bring additional cost as it relates to property taxes and solid waste fees. Our employees may no longer be able to stay employed with the county, or certainly live in the homes they're living in. Beyond the employees and in respect to non-employee citizens, due to the change in the ISO rating in Walter Hill, I received many calls and emails from folks who have said that they may have to sell their home due to those insurance increases. I can only imagine those who are having to choose between groceries and prescriptions. Again, try to put yourself in their shoes. I think they expect us to do that sometimes. I'm getting very close to being finished, and I appreciate your patience. Matters relating to title examinations of land, property sales, and property acquisitions by eminent domain or otherwise. I would hope we would all agree to the importance of and protection of property rights, and the exercise of eminent domain being the very, very last resort. With that being said, I would like to recommend any effort to acquire property resulting in that choice, no other choice but the exercise of eminent domain, be presented to the Property Management Committee for a recommendation to the Commission for approval, or even approval just from the committee. And then there's another clause, and again, I brought this up in the steering committee. Page 4, Section 4, Paragraph C, it states in part, for all the above representations, Rutherford County shall act in good faith to represent, defend, and pay liability claims against the county attorney and associates related to legal representation of Rutherford County as set forth above. When I questioned this at the steering committee, the response centered around the words good faith and inferring if or when a situation would fall under that paragraph, that we would have that discussion. I paid more attention to the word shall. That's pretty much, this is what you're going to do kind of word. To me, this is very vague, blanket, and open-ended part of the agreement. I pay quite a bit of money for insurance each year for my business to protect the company, which includes myself and my employees. My insurance company requires me to require independent contractors very specific types of insurance with very specific limitations and terms. They require me to do that, and if one of my contractors makes a mistake, which has happened, I simply call them, tell them to file a claim with their insurance. It's not my responsibility. They're an independent contractor. They're self-employed just like I am. I simply fall back on their insurance carrier as my company is named on their insurance certificate as an additional insured or certificate holder. Even if I were facing litigation and my independent contractor was also named, under no circumstance would I ever agree to represent, defend, and pay liability claims against that self-employed independent contractor. And I'm curious if I could find too many people that would do so either. Remember, if this remains worded and a situation occurs that falls under this paragraph, the taxpayers are footing the bill. And finally, almost finally, I understand the general legal services compensation. That's pretty clear. There's a set amount paid each month to the law firm and the county attorney. Sonia, you can shake your head yes or no. She didn't hear the question. I'm pretty sure that's the way it is. However, in terms of litigation and extra services referred to on page 5, section 2, paragraphs A through C, and any other expenses outside the scope of the general legal services compensation, I would request these invoices be presented to the Chairman of Budget and Finance Committee, either from the county attorney or the finance director each month. I would defer to the Budget and Finance Committee's discretion whether the entire committee would review as well. And let me go back to the very first paragraph, and I'm finished. I want to make it very clear, I am in no way against Nick Christensen or his law firm at all. I am against several items on the legal agreement, which I questioned in the steering committee. Should these items not get resolved in good conscience, I cannot support this agreement. As you know, the RNA has voiced their concern. However, there are other citizens I've been in contact with in my district that share my same concerns that happen to be very similar, and those are the people I answer to. So that's the end of my dissertation. I know this isn't something that we want to sit and dissect tonight. I would ask or make a request of Chairman Stevens to maybe rescind that motion, and let's kick it back to steering one more time. Again, this is one of those things, I don't think we're in a huge rush. This is nothing we have to do really quickly, but I'll leave that up to the chairman, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gurley.
And Commissioner Stevens, feel free to go back to the podium.
Yeah, return to the welcome, Chairman.
A couple of concerns that I have, as most of you know, I've asked for the last couple of years prior to Mayor Ketron taking office, to study legal services here in the county. Proposed an ad hoc committee that didn't go over too well, so I asked Chairman Turner in steering, and about the time he said, yes, we're going to do that, he was appointed commissioner for the state. I think we missed a good opportunity. I really don't understand why we had a special call meeting and then quickly implemented this as if it was a rush. Some of the concerns that I have, I've gone through, I've looked, if you go on the Board of Professional Responsibility website, I've looked at umpteen opinions in terms of conflicts of interest, et cetera. There are plenty there. There are plenty about firms. There are plenty about county attorneys, city attorneys, all kinds of opinions as far as what can be done by who. I believe the firm, and you might, Mr. Christensen, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but the firm represents CUD?
They are a client, yes.
Represents the Rutherford County School Board?
We do.
Represents the city of Laverne?
We do.
And I'm sure others.
But we wouldn't if there was any substantial adversarial litigation or dispute pursuant to the professional rules of responsibility.
The problem that I have with that is that as a firm, have you ever worked on any of these, with any of these other entities in the last several years?
Well, have I performed work for the clients that you just named?
Yes.
I imagine at some point that I have, yes.
And I would suspect that other attorneys have done the same, so it's very intermingled. And if we ever have a lawsuit between any of these entities, and this is just three that I'm well aware of, then I don't know who's going to be representing Rutherford County. I don't know who really represents who. And that is a problem that I have. I really think, I'm not sure what the best way, I'm not against contractual representation per se, but when you have one firm representing so many intertwined entities, it becomes very complicated to me. I just don't see that in any kind of law working very well. I don't know. I'm just a logical thinker. When I start thinking about things, you know, if this happened and that happened, we would hope that nothing ever happened. But if nothing ever happened, we would have no need to take out insurance. We would have no need to keep an attorney on retainer. It's because of things do happen that we do all those things. And so I just think we need to back up and punt and look at the whole picture a little better before we go further. Thank you.
Other comments or discussion? We have a motion before us. Commissioner McAdoo.
I said I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm on steering committee too. And I thought about all this, and we need to look at where we are now. You bring it up that you were with conflict of interest, so on and so forth. But we got serious lawsuits in this county that was handled by this law firm for a couple of years. And now you tell me that we just need to get rid of them? That's what I'm looking at. We have serious lawsuits, and I think the mayor can contend to that. And I don't see where we're going to change horses in the middle of the stream, and we've been looking at that for some of these lawsuits for a couple of years. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Other discussion? Commissioner Allen.
To Commissioner Gurley's point, I just wanted to remind everybody, we had a situation where the county attorney had to recuse himself because we were in a lawsuit or an illegal conundrum with our sheriff. And so when the ethics committee met, our county attorney was not able to advise us because he also represented the sheriff in other matters. That's no different than the city of Laverne or anything else. We have a large government, and we have lots of different entities that as a county attorney he's going to represent. So the fact that we utilized an outside firm for that was the appropriate thing to do at that time. That's the only time that I can really think of where something that specific ever happened. So I don't think it's an ongoing problem that should steer us away from a relationship with Mr. Christensen. I think it's a reality that we would have regardless of who we hired. So I just want to point that out, that we had that experience, we dealt with it, and it was resolved pretty easily, and it worked out for everybody.
Other questions or discussion? We have a motion before us and a second. You're on the board, members. Cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote, Madam Secretary.
15 yes, 3 no, 1 abstain. Motion passes.
Yes, our attorney would like to say a few words.
Everyone,
Mr.
I just want to say
Christensen.
thank you, and I look forward to serving the county commission for the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item. Commissioner.
Oh, the next item is the discussion of the commission chairman structure, and steering brought this up several months ago and studied it for a couple of months, and then it was on last month's agenda. Our meeting went several hours, so we voted to defer this discussion to tonight. So before we begin that discussion, I want to say that steering did not make a recommendation on anything. We just bounced some ideas around. There was differing opinions on the committee, but we felt like it was a discussion that was worth having as a full commission. So that's why it's here tonight. We're not actually looking for a vote or a motion necessarily. We just want to discuss the topic and see if it's somewhere we'd like to go in the future. And I can personally say I've been talking about this for almost 9 years now. But one of the first things I noticed when we got here was the way that we operate seems a bit unusual when you look at it through the Tennessee Constitution. So there's 2 different reasons why I believe we should consider making this change. And the first one is the state constitution. When we all got elected to office, we got sworn in, everybody was excited to take the oath of office, and one of the things that you agreed to do was to uphold the Tennessee Constitution. And I would recommend that everybody read through there very carefully. If you do that, you're going to find out that the people is a theme that you're going to find. When our forefathers and ancestors came over the mountains from North Carolina, they had a disdain and a strong distrust for centralized government, and they wanted to be sure that the executive branch was not very strong. So they vested most of the power in the legislative branch. In fact, you're going to find in Article 1, Section 1, that the power is inherent in the people. On and on and on about the people. Article 2, there's 3 different sections of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. Section 2, no person belonging to one of these departments shall exercise any of the powers properly belonging to either of the others, except in the cases outlined in the Constitution. Now, I know this applies specifically to the state of Tennessee's government, but the intent and the spirit of it is that they don't want too much centralized power in one executive person. It's supposed to be spread out and vested in the people's representatives, which is us. I never have understood how this system that we use meets this. If you take out the people, take out the personalities, and just look at our system from 30,000 feet, is that the system that we find in our state constitution? And nobody has been able to explain to me yet how it is. I've always wanted to know. The answers that we will get are, we've always done it this way, the sky's going to fall if we change, we'll never get anything done. We heard that there were some kind of fist fights back in the 1970s and things like this as to reasons why we shouldn't make this change now, in 2019. I haven't heard any convincing argument why we should keep doing it this way when you look at our documents. Also, if you look at the other big counties, we're the only one that does it this way. And we seem to think that we do things the way everybody else does a lot of times, but if you spend the time and go to Knox County, go to Hamilton County, go to Shelby County, of course Davidson County's got a metropolitan form of government. Look at Williamson County. We're the only one that does it this way. And when you call those commissioners, call the mayors, call the people that work for those departments and ask them why they do it that way, they say the mayor has his job and the commissioners have their job. And each one does its own responsibilities. Then when we tell them we do it this way, they just can't believe it. Like, why aren't you doing your job? And why is the mayor doing your job for you? They can't seem to comprehend that, and it really doesn't make sense. We need to be a separate branch of government. We need to do our own thing. We're the policy makers. The mayor is a department head. We make the policies. The mayor carries those out. I still don't understand why the mayor would be on the policy-making board if he's the department head. If the county judges came over here to the county commission and said, we're going to start running your meeting, we would be very offended by that. That's not how it works. If we went to the clerks, to the court's offices over there and said, we're going to start making the judicial decisions, or we're going to start making the hiring and firing decisions for the mayor, that's not how it works. So how does it make sense for the mayor to come and do a legislative branch? You know, it's okay for that, but it's not okay for the other way. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around this logically. I believe our system is flawed. In the bigger counties, you know, we're growing. I think we need to look at what other people are doing that are the bigger counties, and if you do spend the time looking at their county commissions and the way they operate, they are light years ahead of us. Our commission rules were drafted up in 1955. If you look at the way they're doing business, it's so much more efficient and so much more effective. Of course, they have a smaller commission too. But their commission runs one way, ours runs a completely different way that's antiquated. Our whole system needs an overhaul, in my opinion. But I just wanted to bring that up for discussion because at some point in the future, we need to look at separating these two and restoring the balance that we find in our state constitution. It doesn't make sense to me that we're doing it this way, and the reason that I always get is because we've always done it this way. And you know, for me, I'm not a person that likes that answer. That might be the best way to do it, but that's not a good answer for me. I like logic, reasoning, and something that can explain to me how this actually makes sense. And nobody has been able to tell me that over time. So those are the reasons why I believe that we should consider changing this in the future. I don't believe there's a lot of support for doing that. We're complacent and comfortable a lot of times. Things are working. Nobody's upset. But what if our next mayor has a conflict with us? We seem to get along fine with Mayor Ketchum. What if our next mayor has a conflict? It's really hard to change midstream and fix a problem. Now's the time when we should be making the change when everything's working well. In August, when we elect a chairman, that should be the time for us to go ahead and set everything up while it's all smooth sailing. If there is a conflict with the executive branch, it's going to be really hard to separate and fix the problem then if they're all intertwined together. So now's the time for us to be thinking ahead, thinking toward the future, being visionaries, and making our county commission more effective for our residents. So I believe that as we move forward, we should consider making that change.
Mr. Gurley.
Yes, are you proposing to reduce the size of the commission?
That's not part of this discussion. We talked about that about 9 years ago when we did redistricting. That was one of the items that we had looked at. But this discussion was strictly about whether the mayor should be the commission chairman or whether a commissioner should be the commission chairman. That the redistricting discussion and the reducing the size of the commission is something completely different.
Okay.
Other comments or discussion? Chairman P.
Just a few things to say. When you were sworn in, you also swore to another antiquated document. It's called the Constitution of the United States. I think it was been around since, 1776, somewhere in that area. So some documents are very good, and we want to adhere to them. Just wanted to point that out. We have, since I've been here, and since my father was here 30 years prior to me, I always had the opportunity and the permission, or we could have put a different person besides the county mayor or county executive or county judge over the commission. We have done that in the past. Didn't work too well in the past. Maybe could in the future. However, some of the reasoning that I just heard, we're a growing county. We sure are. I think most of you got that email from the mayor where we got 26 people a day coming in. I wonder why they're coming here. I wonder why. Could it be because there's opportunity here? Could it be because we've got good education, because we've got good laws? Could it be because we've got good law enforcement? And part of the reason for that are you gentlemen and ladies sitting right here, and the rules and regulations we've set out over the years. And I'm kind of one of these guys is if it's not broke, I'm not ready to fix it. If I had a problem with current mayor, whoever it might be, then I would address it at that time, and all of us could. You know, we had a problem with the sheriff. That got addressed, didn't it? Okay? We could also address that in any capacity of anybody sitting here or the mayor included. But I don't see making any drastic changes here. The things that I have seen put up would mean hiring extra people to give us some more people to work with, a chairman in particular besides the mayor. You know, that's more money. And I don't think it's needed. Now, if I thought it was needed, I'd stand right up with Commissioner Stevens and say, yeah, let's do this. And I'd be willing to look at it at any time. But right now, I don't see a problem. As a matter of fact, I see a success going on in this county. Thank you.
Other comments? Any further discussion? Commissioner Allen.
It's getting late, so I'm going to try to keep these comments brief. I just want to share with those of you who haven't watched steering, because I've made these same comments a couple of times to steering, and so I just want to make sure I share those here just while we're talking about it. When we have the mayor as the chairman, ideally, the way that the system could be set up is you would have the mayor, you would have a chairman, you would have the chairman pro tem. When the mayor's your chairman, if something happens to him, and I know he hates when I talk about this, but it's the reality. Every person in this room can talk about a time in their life when something unexpected happened. And so we can't sit here and pretend something unexpected couldn't happen. If you lose him for some reason, if he's incapacitated, whatever, now you've lost 2 of your top leaders of the commission. And so now you're left with your chairman pro tem. I have voted for Jeff Phillips and would continue to vote for Jeff Phillips as many times as he wants to be chairman pro tem. What I didn't know, and I accept full responsibility for this, what I didn't know until I began to study this and look at this, and my reasons are entirely different than Robert's. Mine are more about the fact that when we had some issues come up earlier this year And it was not under this administration. There was a matter, it was actually last year, I'm sorry. It was an issue that was reported to a previous county mayor. Technically, the commission was notified because the chairman of the commission was notified, although 21 people had no idea that there was a problem. And for months, 21 people didn't know, but we were technically notified. And so I have a problem with that. The second thing that I had a problem with is, whenever we had voted for Chairman Pro Tem, I always understood it, and this is entirely, I accept full responsibility for not being more knowledgeable and not having really understood the words as they were said to me, I guess, during my different trainings. I understood the Chairman Pro Tem was just the guy who was going to run the meeting, in the absence of the mayor if he couldn't be here. I didn't realize he's the guy who runs the county. He's the default constitutional officer who fills that role. And so had I known that, again, like I said, I'll vote for Jeff Phillips as many times as he wants to do it. But now my expectations of him are different, and it's a much more weightier conversation. And I want him much more engaged, and I want him in weekly meetings or briefings or whatever. I want him ready to step in. If we keep this model and decide to keep it the way that we have, I think we need to make sure that we've got a real commitment to that position, and that position is committed to serving in that role. If we don't do it, if we make the change, all you're doing is building bench strength. If you're right now you've got 2, you could have 3. I hate making the change in the middle of an administration. We should have done it in between elections because it feels like you're firing the mayor. And that is not at all my intent or my interest, but that's got to be how it feels. So I apologize if that's how it feels, but that is not at all my thinking. My thinking is simply, is this a flawed model? And in my mind, it feels like it is. And so until somebody can convince me to do it differently, I will probably never vote for the mayor to be the chairman of the commission again. Never say never, but the way my thinking is right now, this model doesn't make sense to me anymore. It's too risky. If you can build bench strength, you need to build bench strength. And we've got the leadership in this organization to do it. I was looking back over our commission rules. In the commission rules, it says that the mayor will provide the commission with secretarial support. We don't have to hire somebody else. Vicki can continue to stay in that role. She can continue to help and support us. There doesn't have to be sweeping, drastic changes for us to be more engaged and to lead this commission. So those were some of the reasons that I wanted to say, if we're going to continue doing it the way we've been doing it, we need to think very seriously about that pro tem role and what we expect of that person, and probably regardless. But if we are going to change it, then we need to look at changing it and just look at it from every perspective, every aspect of the pros and the cons. I've come up with mine, you'll come up with yours, but I just wanted to share with you what my thinking was.
Other comments? Commissioner McAdoo, and then Commissioner Phillips, you yield, and then Commissioner McAdoo.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I feel like I need to resign. But I'm not going to on the spot. I need to think that through a little bit. I've been sitting in this room for a good number of years, and the way I look at it, and I could be looking at this wrong, but the mayor is elected countywide. We are not. And I think if the mayor is interested in running for the commission of this county, he or she should have the right to do that. All he is a candidate. Anytime, any one of us can nominate someone else. I'm here to tell you, I wouldn't want that job. I think it would end up being a full-time job. I'm not 100% sure how many hours Bill Ketron is putting in. I am 100% sure that Mayor Burgess was putting in 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for the most part. And I think Mr. Ketron, Mayor Ketron, is doing the same thing. And I think if we had someone that's a chairperson, they'd have to be doing that too. When I was first elected, this was a part-time job for me. And I'm assuming it's a part-time job for a lot of you guys. So where does that leave us? If one of us, as part-time employees, were asked to run this full commission and present all of the information that the mayor and the mayor's office works on every single solitary day. As far as the Chairman Pro Tem, I think that's a really good point. I do, and if we need to revisit that, I'm all for that. Looking at Commissioner Stevens, since he's been up here, he has presented a whole variety of ideas that has challenged this commission, and most of them have been point on. Doesn't mean that I've agreed with him every time, but I've agreed with him most every time. This just happens to be one of them that I do not. This body right here has the opportunity to elect whoever they want as chairman of this commission at any time they want. He is term limited. What if we took him out of the equation, or the mayor's position out of the equation, and 8 years down the road, there was someone that was elected as chairman of this commission that created havoc? We've never had that in my 25 plus years on this commission. We have never had that. And the commission has run very smoothly, starting back with Mayor Mankin, Mayor Allen, Mayor Burgess, and now Mayor Ketron. I guess I'm trying to say is that if it's not broke, don't fix it. And that's not the proper terminology, I don't think. If this commission thinks that we need to make changes going forward, I'll be on board with that. But as far as this commissioner, at this commission, I won't support it, taking the mayor out of the equation. Any one of us that wanted his job had the opportunity to do it last year, and we've got the opportunity to do it this year. The way I understand it, and I probably have got this wrong, but in my mind, the way I understand it, if someone were chairman of this commission other than the mayor, it would be pretty much a full-time position, and that position would have its own staff. And I'm assuming that there'd be a lot of coordination that had to happen with the mayor's office. And it just would, in my mind, it would just add an extra step. I'm supportive of us looking forward. From a planning perspective, we have to look forward. We can't look back. We have to look forward to what's going on. And that's the reason that I'm supportive of Commissioner Stevens being so passionate about this. But I'm just not in favor of doing anything that take our choice to elect our mayor as chairman of this commission. Now, Pro Tem, if there's somebody that can and wants to do a better job, I'll look at Commissioner Stevens. He could do 10 times better job than I could. And if he wants it, or if Mr. McAdoo wants it, they can absolutely positively have it. And there has been much more coordination with the Chairman Pro Tem in the last year than there was in the prior 4 years that I served in that position. And I've been more in the loop on certain things, and I'm very appreciative of that. But that doesn't mean that I want to spend 8 hours a day, every day, doing this. I'm going to repeat this more than once. I'm retired. I like to be retired. This is a part-time job for me, and I would never accept it as a full-time job.
Commissioner McAdoo.
I don't know if it's wise for me to say that publicly right now. No. I can look into that if you want to call me Commissioner McAdoo, and I can look at the structure and see if it comports with statute and get back to you. Yeah.
Commissioner Stevens.
I don't think anybody has alleged that this is illegal. The thing that we're talking about is this the best way to do it. The state law says that the commission can elect the mayor as the chairman if the commission chooses. It's not the mayor's choice to be elected. It's the commission's choice to choose the mayor to be the chairman. So, and we're not trying to bind future commissions by saying we have to elect a commissioner. As Commissioner Phillips said, it's elected every year, so you can always make that change. In Laverne, recently, they voted to remove the vice mayor and put a new person into that position. So I would assume that, at any point, chairman or chairman pro tem could be voted out and have a new one put in too. That's a discussion for another day. But I don't think anybody's tried to allege that it's illegal to do that. This is just thinking forward. There's a reason the big counties do it the way that they do. And if we're going to move forward and continue to grow and get to their size, their mayors, they told me, those folks that work for the mayor said he doesn't have time to do the commission's job and his. He's got so many departments, employees, and problems and lawsuits and things going on that he doesn't have time to go and deal with all the commission's problems. Now, the state law also says that the mayor is a non-voting member of the commission, so whether he's chairman or not, he's still here and still involved and still engaged and can give input if he chooses, and he's also a non-voting member of every committee that we have. So he can speak, and it even says that he can send a professional person from his staff. I'm not sure why they put the word professional in the law, but they have to send a professional person with competence or something like that to the committees, and that person can represent the mayor and be recognized to give input too. So this is not some kind of attempt to remove the mayor from the process. The mayor's still involved, and the only reason the mayor would not be involved would be if he chose to disengage, and I don't believe that's going to happen. I believe that we have very qualified and competent people here, and I have a high opinion of our capabilities and competence. I believe that we can handle the job and handle our responsibilities, and I would like to see us consider that moving forward instead of pushing everything off on the mayor.
Other comments? Questions? Commissioner Harris.
Well, I've been a commissioner for 7 months, 6 months. We can discuss this every single month. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for Robert Stevens and Rod Allen. But it comes to a point where we need to vote on this. And I want to make a motion to keep the system the way it is.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. Questions? Commissioner Allen.
We vote in August. We're not making any changes. There's nothing to vote on. We vote a new chairman in August. Nobody's proposed anything. There's not been any motion to change. We vote in August.
I believe was that a proper motion?
Let me just add one more thing. The only reason we've talked about this is because it is such a massive change. That's the only reason. It's not to wear anybody out. It's not to frustrate anybody. It's because it's such a massive change from how we've ever done it. It's such an important decision that you need time to consider all the elements, consider all the factors that are going to influence your decision in August. Not now. Nobody's asking for any changes now. So I'm sorry if you feel like, you've gotten more information or this has frustrated you in some way. That's not been the intent. The intent has been, it's a weighty decision. It's a serious conversation. Just want you to have time to do your due diligence before you cast your vote in August. That's been my intent, at least.
Yeah. I've consulted with the attorney, and they're probably on a motion like that, Commissioner Harris, there probably needs to be notice given on something as important as far as our structure is concerned. Or are you waiting until my term ends and we re-elect department chairs and et cetera come August or September? But since are you okay with that?
Yeah, I would say
Okay, and your second? We're sending a second.
I'm going to think about it a second, because the kicker is we need to put this to bed. Because I'm tired of hearing about it. I think we've got a good system. I've worked through judges, county executives, mayors, the whole thing, and I've seen how it worked. If you're not supposed to be there, you won't be there. If there's a problem, it can be fixed. But this is something in committee that can be discussed. If it comes out of the committee with the votes to discuss it further, that's worth it. And I know everybody can bring anything up they want to. I'm not saying you can't. But I think that in some form or fashion, we need to show support and say, this is it, let's move on and get on with other county business. That's my feeling about it. Now, if by etiquette, protocol and everything, I need to rescind, I will.
You can vote it back to the steering committee and put that on the agenda and then send it here, based on, correct?
If you're wanting some more information, you could do a motion to commit that issue back to whatever committee would be deciding and discussing it.
It would be steering.
It's not a matter of wanting more information. It's a matter, if you're going to have this come out of something this serious, it needs to come out of steering committee with a recommendation to start with. That would be my motion if I made one.
So that would be a motion to commit to the steering committee and direct them to provide a recommendation favorably or unfavorably for whatever change they would suggest.
Okay. All right.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Discussion.
Commissioner Gammon, this was going to be the end of it. Like, there's no decision to make until August. The steering committee's looked at it. We just wanted to discuss it. It's not going to come back up again here or there until we
Yes, you discussed it in your committee. We've heard enough here. I mean, I've heard enough myself, and I'm done with it. If you want to come out of steering committee with a vote that says this is what we need to look at, let's do it.
We're done until August. I mean, when we vote again.
Why bring it up now?
Because the steering committee voted to send it to here to discuss.
Well, I still stand what I said.
So it's going to be kept alive and come back to steering again, if you do your motion. If you want it to die, just don't make a motion and we're done until we elect our chairman in August, like we do every year. Your motion keeps it alive.
Only for a month.
Keeps it alive only for a month, is that correct?
I'm sorry?
Keeps it alive only a month.
Well, it would keep it alive until you're referring it to the committee to make a decision to end it or wait until August, I would assume.
I'm ready to send it back to them, let them debate it again. If they want to get on the floor and do that, then let's go. But I know how I'm going to vote.
Well,
I can assure you that. So
there'll have to be steering is a recommending body anyway, so it will either come before you as a positive or a negative recommendation in the full county commission.
And that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. All right. On the motion. Discussion on the motion.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Chairman Stevens. I may have made the motion to bring this here, but I believe I did, only because I didn't want 7 people having that discussion. I wanted to hear from everybody in here because it affects every single one of us. And so the discussion has taken place and people got to weigh in and had that opportunity, and that was it. It was never never anybody's intention, I don't believe on steering, certainly not mine that made the motion, that we were bringing this here as a recommendation for a vote. I voted to bring it to steering, or bring it here to let that be discussed amongst the commissioners. So I agree with Commissioner Stevens. It's over. It's done. There's no more to talk about on steering. We'll bring it back up later if it needs to be brought back up or somebody wants to.
Well, Commissioner Gammon does have the right to make a motion to send it back for discussion to, you know, put it on the agenda.
I'll rescind that.
All right. It's been rescinded. Okay. Do you seconded to rescind? Okay. Okay. You did second the motion. Do you rescind your second, Mr. Jernigan? He does. All right, Commissioner Johnson.
Would it be in order if we called for a vote of confidence, any kind of a motion in that trend, Mr. Attorney?
Could you define what you mean by vote of confidence?
Vote of confidence for the way the situation is now and our mayor?
So I don't think that there's a prohibition on making that type of motion. I can look at Robert's rules. It's possible that that might be a motion that's out of order because you're really not changing anything. You're just affirming what's being done now. If you go ahead and make that motion, then it's going to be subject to later scrutiny for a motion for reconsideration. So you're kind of further exacerbating the confusion there. So it sounds to me, I'm not the policymaker here, but it sounds to me that there was actually no recommendation brought up from the steering committee. It was simply just brought up here for discussion. The county commission has discussed it, and if they don't act on it, everything stays the same. So there's really not necessary for any motion.
Well, the bottom line is we beat this dead horse as much as we need to beat it, and I'm tired of hearing it.
Well, before, go ahead. And then I've got two comments since a lot of it, my name's been, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Might be short by my motion. I understand that this was brought up for discussion. We had the discussion and it's over with. Is that correct? If it's over with, I'll make a motion we adjourn.
Well, I've got a motion and a second, but I'm gonna make a few comments.
Before we adjourn, I do have one announcement I need to make.
What? Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to make two comments, okay? Two comments concerning the discussion today, okay? I've worked with counties that have the mayor to serve as chairman of the commission. I've worked with, in particularly Marshall County, who they chose to have a commissioner as chairman. It never worked for Mayor Joe Boyd Liggett, served for 16 years in that position as not the chairman, but what happens under Tennessee Code annotated, if the mayor does not serve, then he has, under code, he has veto power. I prefer not to have veto power because we are at a point in this county that we are growing at such a fast pace. If I were to step forward and veto an action of this body, all it's going to do is divide this body. We are working on all cylinders right now as a team, and I don't want to split that team up. It's my opinion. If I were to come back and veto some issue that I felt was in the best interest of the county. Secondly, Commissioner Stevens, concerning the separation between legislative and executive bodies, I don't think you'll get any higher than the U.S. Senate. I think all of you know that Vice President Pence works in the executive branch, but he also serves as president of the U.S. Senate in the legislative branch. It seems to work there. I think it's working here together because we're doing fabulous things in this county. We're working together as a team. So I think that's my personal opinion based on the discussion tonight on the position I hold. I thanked you back in September when you elected me to the position as chairman, but that will be up for discussion when it comes up for renewal, when we vote for our chairman and for all of our chairmen of the different committees in August. So, Commissioner P., comments, announcements?
The announcement is for Budget Committee, but also Health and Ed. We have a joint meeting on the 21st. That's next Tuesday at 5:30 at the Board of Education. Just want to remind everybody, and I would suggest any commissioner, whether you're on Health and Ed or Budget, to try to be there because the budget for the schools will be presented at that time. But that's at 5:30 at the Board of Education next Tuesday.
Any other statements or announcements? Chairman Reed.
Commissioners, I may have been in here so long tonight, I may have to turn on my GPS to find my truck to get home. But what I want to say tonight, last Friday evening, I was in Eagleville at the FFA Awards program they had down there. And they recognized so many young people. It was just outstanding to see these people recognized down there. And something you need to know about that school down there, that FFA chapter has been recognized as the most outstanding FFA chapter in the region of Middle Tennessee. And that is an outstanding award for that school to be recognized, that for us to have one in our county. But I recognized Mr. Haley, who is their advisor down there, and Miss Marshall. They've done a well of a job down there. It's a full-time job. It's a busy year for them. They've won state awards. They've got individuals going to the national contest, and I just wanted to recognize them before this body tonight.
Thank you, sir. Any other statements or announcements? Commissioner Allen.
I'll do my announcements first because you're not going to want to listen to me after I do my last piece of business. The announcements are on 5/22. We added for budget, we added a special section where we're going to talk about specifically salaries and their impact. As we've gone through and been approving budgets this week, we've not looked at salaries and benefits and the ripple effect that's going to have. So anybody who wants to participate and listen to that, because that's going to be the biggest impact that we're going to have. We're overhauling the entire pay scale. So that might be an important meeting that everybody would want to come to. We did that. We put it on the 22nd with the caveat that if we're brain dead by the time we get to that, we might decide to reschedule it for another night. But the plan is right now, when we're done with all the regular business on the 22nd, that we're going to dive into that. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock in this room, the Community Learning Center, it's a choice school. It's a private school that's actually operated by the county. It's not part of the school system per se, and so it catches those kids that kind of fall through the cracks. And so these are kids who wouldn't graduate with a degree more than likely otherwise if it wasn't for this program. It's a very rich program. It means a lot to these kids, a lot to these families. The class sizes could be anywhere from 6 to 16. I come every year. I cry every year. It's a great experience. So if you have a chance to be here tomorrow at 11 o'clock, I would really encourage you to be here and attend that graduation. It's in this room. So this is my last order of business. And I really wasn't planning on doing this tonight. I thought we had until October. I thought we had until open enrollment to talk about the commissioners being on health insurance. But when I checked my box and I saw that we're having the special open enrollment period, I guess I just need, if you're talking about a vote of confidence, I just need for this body to reaffirm that this is what we really want to do. Because I don't know if you all are receiving the same level of heat that I am on this decision. But I would like to make a motion that we rescind this decision and do not add commissioners to the health insurance or the Board of Health, the ripple effect, all the others that would be on there. Because if we do want to do it, we need to do it with our eyes wide open. Every point that Commissioner Rather made about why Nick shouldn't be on the insurance is equally true for the rest of this bunch.
A motion and a second. Discussion. The motion is, let me ask our attorney, in order to undo a previous motion, is it going to take 2/3 or by simple majority?
I actually looked up on this issue, on a different issue, but this motion to rescind matter, it depends on the type of notice. Let me look at this real quick, because I've got some notes. Yeah, so if there was notice of an intent to make a motion like this to rescind a previous resolution, it would only require a majority vote. But because there is, as the mayor indicated, there was really no notice of this, and at least in the agenda, it would require a 2/3 vote. It's debatable, and you can talk about the merits of the underlying resolution that was passed, I believe, earlier this year, sometime in February. So you can do it, but it would take a 2/3 vote to rescind it.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Rather.
Dick, to make that motion, is it true you had to be in the prevailing party, or was that just in that same meeting to have a vote to reconsider?
Yeah, so a motion to reconsider is different from a motion to rescind. Here we're talking about a motion to rescind, and it does not matter on what side you voted originally. There is a funny aspect of this motion to rescind that you can only rescind things that are not impossible to undo. I don't know what that means. Roberts doesn't define that, and I don't know enough facts about what has been done by risk management here in regards to placing any individual county commission members or other members on county insurance. So I don't know if that's impossible to undo or if the plan documents have or have not already been amended. Presumably, though, if they're just plan documents and you can submit new amendments, it's not impossible to undo. But I don't know. You might want to ask.
Measure McAdoo.
I'll probably would need some type of statistics since we've had this motion and it passed. So I'm asking my finance director, how many elected officials have signed up for insurance since we passed this?
They don't sign up in my office, but information coming from HR is none. Do what? Oh, open enrollment hasn't happened yet, so.
Yeah, somebody signed up, so they can't sign up until enrollment is announced.
Which is why that is 0.
Other discussion? Commissioner Allen.
I just had a question for Nick. Is it 2/3 of the body or 2/3 of who's here? And then the other thing I was going to say is the reason that I brought this up tonight is because with the packet, open enrollment is June 3rd, so it's either now or never. So that was the reason for the short notice, and I apologize.
Y'all are going to have to give me a minute to look because we're getting kind of really in the weeds of parliamentary procedure here, which as you all know, we try not to get into too much, but if you want to take a recess for 5 minutes, we can, or you can just sit here in silence while some people might have to use the restroom. I know I do, but.
Commissioner Phillips.
Let me just ask one question. If I remember correctly along these lines, it was offering insurance to, in essence, the employee, which was the commissioner or the road board member or the school board member, any of those things, at 100% cost of the product. So we're not giving them anything that they're not paying 100% fully for. Isn't that correct? And the cost of that is kind of sort of How much? That might have been, how much was it, Commissioner Allen?
I have the rates right here in the packet. It depends on which plan you choose. For the copay plan, for employee only, it's $648.64. Employee spouse is $1,362.15. Employee and child or children is $1,199.97. Family is $1,881.03. If you choose the HRA plan, employee only is $475.31. Employee plus spouse, $998.13. Employee plus child or children is $879.30. Family is $1,378.36. And just to your point, even though no tax dollars are being put towards the premium, the complaints that I'm hearing are the claims experience, is that the concern is just simply that more claims will be paid out than premiums will be paid in. That's the cost.
If I remember right, our risk manager made a comment on that it would be insignificant or none when that was asked at an insurance committee meeting. That's what I remember her saying at the time.
What I heard her say was we could absorb it. We could absorb the risk.
No, I believe she said negligible was the word. Commissioner Gurley?
Yes, because I voted no on this to start with, but as I mentioned in my comments at that point in time, I've seen some employees that have gone to max on this. To say that there's no risk to the county is not true. There is risk to the county because you get an employee that can go to the max, and the county's going to pay out a whole lot more than what they ever paid in premiums. So there is risk to the county. There's no risk to the county if all of us are, 25 and healthy, right? Commissioner Stevens is probably the youngest in here. I assume he's in reasonably good health. But the rest of us progress on up into the 70s and 80s and whatever. I won't go any further than that. But we're not at risk. So it's just not, if I opted to do that, I would be paying my premium. But then if I got a catastrophic illness, I could go to max on the county. And so I pay 2 premiums, go max on the county. Who's won? Who's lost?
I think who's won is that employee that works for the county, such as me. I think that's who's won, because I get my paycheck from the county just like anybody else. I'll never do it. I'm not eligible for it. I'm 70 years old and I'm not eligible for it, and I'll never do it. But why do we insure employees to start with? So that they won't be out catastrophic. And the comment that I just heard is that we don't matter. This commission don't matter, the school board don't matter, the road board don't matter, and that pisses me off.
Other discussion? Comments?
I'm going to just read from Robert's Rules so everybody can hear what I think is the answer. And it says, in an assembly, except when applied to a constitution, bylaws, or special rules of order, this type of motion requires A, a 2/3 vote, B, a majority vote when notice of intent to make the motion stating the complete substance of the proposed change has been given at the previous meeting within a quarterly time interval or in the call of the present meeting, like an agenda, or C, a vote of a majority of the entire membership, any one of which will suffice. So I think that it would be 2/3 of the voting members present or a majority of the entire membership. Either one would suffice.
Probably want to do on the board.
All right, members, we're on the board.
And just for the record,
2/3.
Does anybody have the resolution? Just whoever's
Motion to rescind.
motion to rescind the resolution that was passed whenever, just to make sure it's clear.
Everybody understand the motion? Clarify the motion, Madam Secretary. Read the motion.
The motion is to rescind the decision for the commissioners to be on the county insurance.
Okay. All right, Commissioner McAdoo.
Say that again.
And the road one, that was it, yeah.
That's
okay. The previous resolution, okay? Rescind the previous okay.
okay, members. We're on the board. Cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record a vote, Madam Secretary.
9 yes, 7 no, 2 abstain. Motion fails.
Motion fails. Did not receive 2/3 vote. Next item. Commissioner Blair.
If I will, would like to remind everybody this is graduation week, and we have thousands of students graduating from high school. And if you recall, when you graduated from high school, the celebrations that ensued afterward. And I would urge all of us to keep our children, our students, in our prayers through this week of graduation and celebration. And congratulations to all these students that have moved on to hopefully some post-secondary opportunity. But again, just want to remind us to keep the children and their families in our prayers.
That's good comments, Commissioner. It is graduation, and for all the teachers and principals and everybody and parents seeing their kids graduate, I mean, it's a big deal. No ham breakfast, no pancakes, announcements, anything this weekend. So Commissioner Phillips, I'll entertain your motion to adjourn. And a motion and a second. Stand adjourned.